Hey guys, hope it's going well. Welcome to the first lecture of the Introduction to Electronic Music Production course, hosted on Udemy. So, in this first lecture, I'm just going to give you a rundown on what a DAW is. Basically, back in the day, to get into music production, you needed lots of money or you needed contacts. Everything was done in studios with lots of expensive outboard gear, hardware, and there just wasn't much opportunity for people. So fast forward a couple of years, about 20, and we have 12-year-olds making music on their laptop, becoming famous, that kind of thing. It is so much more accessible in the 21st century. So that's enough of the history and background. I'll get to it. So what is a DAW? First of all, I call it a DAW. It's actually a DAW, which stands for Digital Audio Workstation. I find it more easy to call it a DAW. Hang on, I'll just adjust my microphone. So I call it that. You can call it DAW if you want, or its full name. So yeah, what does Digital Audio Workstation mean? A software DAW consists of a virtual mixing console. Now, what I mean by virtual mixing console is, if you've ever seen a mixing desk in a studio or a live event, it's basically the digital equivalent of that. So instead of moving knobs and faders, you're moving them with your mouse and that kind of thing. Or, yeah, anyway. Musical input device. So you can connect a MIDI keyboard to your computer and you can play notes into it, or you can just input notes with your mouse into a step sequencer or piano roll, which we'll get into later, and make sound, make melodies and chords. And it's also an audio sequencer. By sequencer I mean a program that allows you to arrange, edit, and basically build a song by editing audio and MIDI. So there we go. A software DAW is the digital representation of what most people call a studio. And yeah, a lot of studios do run software DAWs in this day and age, but they still have a lot of outboard gear, hardware components that run into that. So why is software so great? Well, first of all, like I said before, it's much more accessible than it. Music production is much more accessible than it used to be. Obviously, this comes with a number of pros and cons, but I can safely say that the pros outweigh the cons. After all, music is an art, and art should be shared. And my aim with this course is to teach as many people as I can about music production, why I love it, why I do it. I think it's amazing. So that's my number one, point. Like, that's why software is great. It's so much more accessible. You can make music on your laptop. It doesn't cost much money. It's easy to understand. When I went to a live event once, I was near sound desk and I had no idea what was going on. Now you can open up your DAW. You can go onto YouTube and search for a beginner's tutorial and you can understand it. It's also cheaper. I already mentioned this. Sorry about that, but it is much cheaper. There is a DAW called Reaper, which is technically free. You can evaluate it for as long as you want, which means you don't have to pay for it. But yeah, it's much cheaper. The one we're using for this course it does cost, but we can use the demo free of charge, and the only limitation is that we can't save a project, which is not a big deal at the moment. So the next lecture, this is a bit of a short lecture because I'm just covering some basic stuff, basic information, so you know where I'm coming from especially when I talk about terms. And don't worry, the next lectures will be much longer. I hope you don't get bored. So next lecture, the playlist. So FL Studio, the DAW we're using, contains a playlist, and the playlist is basically the audio sequencer. That's where we arrange our song. That's where we put different sounds together, and that's where we edit everything pretty much. The step sequencer is where we build individual patterns, individual sounds. For example, drum beats or melodies. That's a step sequencer. The mixer is, like I said before, the digital representation of a mixing desk. I will go into this in more detail in the next video. And the browser is basically where we find sounds and drag them into our DAW. Alright guys, welcome to lecture 2 of the Introduction to Electronic Music Production course. In this lecture we're going to be covering FL Studio. Now if this is the first time you've ever used this program, the interface may seem very confusing, but you don't need to worry because I'm going to be going into each different section of this program as much as I can, explain it the best as I can. You may have to watch this video twice because some things may take a while to get, but I'm going to try and keep it as simple as I can. Alright, so basically when you open FL Studio, you're presented with this thing here, which is your step sequencer. And actually before anything, I want you to go into options and go into audio settings and just check your output device, input-output device, and make sure it's primary sound driver or Windows MME or DirectX, if it's unless you have an external sound card, because otherwise you won't get any sound. It should be fine though. Right, so this first thing we see is called the step sequencer, and the step sequencer is basically where we create our parts of a song. For example, a drum beat or a chord progression or melody, whatever. This is where we do it, and basically you have different patterns which you can change up here by scrolling with your mouse or dragging and moving your mouse up and down. Right now we're on pattern 1, and that's the only pattern we have. We can also create a new pattern using this and rename it. And right, so that's the step sequencer. I'm not going to show you how to use it yet. That's going to happen in the next video. So I'll move on to the next thing. So the next thing is a playlist, and this is basically where we arrange our song. In a finished project, it would have a lot of you'd see a lot of different things going on here, patterns, which is the right word for them, and a lot of automation clips, which I'll get into later. So patterns go into the playlist. Basically you just click in here and your patterns will go in. Obviously we don't have anything in our pattern at the moment, but if we did, you would see it here. So that's that. There's a couple of tools that the playlist has. I'll just go through them quickly. First one is a draw tool, which should be there by default. So that's just the tool where you can click around and add your patterns. The next one is a paint tool, which is pretty similar to the draw tool, except we can, instead of just clicking, we can click and drag, and that's a much better tool for adding lots of repetitive loops over 16 to 32 bars or whatever. It's just much quicker. You don't have to worry about the delete tool because unless you have a single click mouse, because to delete a pattern you just right click it and you'll delete it. The mute tool just mutes the pattern, but it doesn't delete it. For example, those are muted, they won't play. You don't need to worry about slip tool. Cut tool, if we had audio or MIDI in here, we could cut a section out and maybe delete it. And we have a select tool, which is useful for moving stuff around, blocks of stuff, copying and pasting, that kind of thing. And you don't have to worry about these two here. Other than that, to zoom in the playlist, you basically drag the scroll bar, or you can do hold down control on your keyboard and use a mouse wheel. And to zoom vertically, it's this little thing up in the corner under the escape button, exit button, like that, up and down, or scroll on it. So that's the playlist. One more thing, you can solo tracks by right clicking them, and you can mute tracks by just clicking them. If you want to unmute all of them, double right click on one. Okay, so we've covered the step sequencer and the playlist. The step sequencer is where we make each different individual part of our song, including drums, melodies, that kind of thing. And our playlist is where we arrange the song and edit it. So the next thing we're going to cover is the mixer. Now the mixer, these are all different tracks, and you'll see that there's activity going on now. That's because my mic is feeding audio into insert 1. Right, insert 1 is feeding into the master channel, and the master channel is basically what comes out into our speakers or headphones. Right, so each of these are channels in your step sequencer, and each time you click one, a channel settings box comes up. Top right of the channel settings box, you'll see a little number, and this number corresponds to a mixer track. So our kick is on number 1 at the moment, which is the same one as my microphone, and I don't want it to be on the same channel. So I'm going to move it to number 5 by scrolling up until I reach number 5. Once it's on number 5, the audio will go through number 5 into the master. So for example, if I click on this waveform down here, you'll see that there's activity in mixer track 5, insert 5. If I click the clap waveform, you'll see it's on insert 2 and hat. They're all assigned to different mixer tracks. The mixer does get much more complicated than that, and I'll be covering that in future lectures. But that's pretty much the basics of it. Right. The final thing I'm going to cover in this is the browser. Now, this might not be, you're not going to have all these. These are samples I've acquired, and I'm going to go through samples, where to get them, how to use them, and that kind of thing. But basically the browser is where you find an audio sample you like, for example a kick. So I like this one, and then you can use it in your pattern. So if I drag it onto an existing channel, it will replace the sample that is on that channel, but it will still be connected to the same mixer track. So I'll just show that, I'll play that there. It's a different kick, but it's still going to insert 5. If I drag it onto a blank space, it'll go to the master channel, and then we have to give it a new mixer track. and you can preview sounds from this. They play automatically. There is another way to insert samples, which is by going load sample and then choosing one. I prefer to do it through the browser. So that's pretty much it for this lecture. Like I said, if you don't understand these kind of things, just watch the lecture again. I will be going more in depth in the next few lectures. It does take a Hey guys, welcome to lecture number 3. Today we're not in FL Studio. I'm just going to be going through MIDI and samples. That should actually be MIDI in capital letters because it's an acronym, which I'll show you on the next page. But basically MIDI and samples are the building blocks for electronic music. Without them, there wouldn't really be electronic music. So it's important that we get this out of the way first before we go into more advanced stuff. So what is MIDI? M-I-D-I. MIDI is short for Musical Instrument Digital Interface. So it's basically when we have a musical instrument such as a VST, which is a plug-in in a DAW, that reads MIDI information and creates sound out of that information. So MIDI contains info such as notation, pitch, velocity, panning, and volume. Now I'll just go through these things quickly. Some of you might not know what they are. So notation is basically just the note. On a musical scale, you go from A to G, and between you have sharps and flats. So MIDI contains notation. It also contains pitch. Pitch is frequency, which we'll get into later. Velocity, we'll get into that in the drum programming section. Panning is basically where the note lies or the sound lies in the stereo field. So is it to the left or to the right of the center? So you'll hear it more in one ear or more in your right ear. And volume, which is pretty self-explanatory. So MIDI is not audio, it just contains data that is read by our DAW. This is important. If we have MIDI, we can't. If you play a MIDI clip on your computer, it may sound like a piano, but it's not actually audio. It is just a file that contains information. That's why MIDI files are very small in size. Right. So yeah, I just pretty much covered that. MIDI does not make any sound by itself. Alright. So why MIDI? Why do we use it? Well, it allows us to work more quickly and efficiently than before. Before MIDI was created, again, it was just hardware studios. It's really slow. As soon as MIDI came in, things were a lot more faster. The ability to edit without having to record again, just a lot of stuff. MIDI is universal and used by music producers everywhere. So basically this allows us as producers to share ideas, edit ideas, it makes it easier for us to collaborate. It's very universal. And it just works. There's some issues with it, which I won't go into. They're very minor, but it just works well. So on to the next part, samples. I briefly covered this in the last lecture when I was showing the browser in FL Studio, but I'll discuss it further. So a sample is just a piece of audio. So if you listen to a song, that's a sample. You listen to a TV show, the audio is a sample. A sample is a blanket term, so it covers pretty much anything that's audio. If you import audio into your DAW, you've imported a sample. Why do we use samples? They're easier to manipulate than MIDI. For example, if you have a melody in MIDI and you put it into your playlist or something, you can't reverse that, or you can't manipulate that the same way you can with audio. And I'll show you this in later lectures, but much easier to manipulate than MIDI and much faster. And they're the foundation of electronic music. Pretty much most producers will use samples for their drums. And here below I say samples speed the process up, and that ties into what I'm talking about with drums, because if you wanted to, you could completely sound design all your drum sounds, but A, they wouldn't sound as real, and B, it would take much longer. So that's what samples are good for. And that's the end of it. So again, this was a short lecture. It's just to give you some information. Hey guys, welcome to the last lecture for section 1. In this lecture I'm just going to be going over what we've already talked about in the introduction. So lecture 1, we talked about the DAW, digital audio workstation. In this lecture I basically explained what a DAW was, and why we're going to use it. If you're still confused about that, I encourage you to go and watch lecture 1 again. Hopefully you've got a copy of FL Studio by now. You should have that for the second lecture. In lecture 2 we cover the basics of our DAW, FL Studio. We basically ran through the step sequencer, which is where we make our patterns, melodies and drum beats. We covered our playlist, which is where we put our song together. We covered our mixer, which is where channels feed into, each of these feed into. And we also covered our browser, which is where we pick samples. That sounded cool. And in lecture 3 we covered MIDI and samples, which I'm just going to go through quickly on here. So basically if we insert an instrument, each note that I put on here will be MIDI. This is MIDI. And I can export this as a MIDI file in here, and you see it will save as a .mid, and that means that if I save it as that, it will just save these notes, the volume of these, but it won't make any sound by itself. The only reason it's making sound is because this instrument is playing those MIDI notes. So it's quite a hard concept to get your head around, but you will get it eventually. And I also covered samples, which I sort of showed you a bit in lecture 2. But basically if we were to build a drum beat, I would drag a number of samples into the step sequencer. So I'll do that quickly. We'll get a kick. That's a sample. Maybe we'll get a clap as well. So this is how we build, this is a sample. We build our drums out of this, and that's what I'm going to be covering in the next section, drum programming. But samples are normally used for drums, also effects. We would drag this into the playlist and use it. And and also vocals are samples. So hopefully that cleared a little bit up in terms of MIDI and samples. You will understand it throughout this course. You'll find it easier to grasp. Alright, so I'll see you in the next lecture where we talk about drums. Okay, so this is just a real short video. I just have to note something, and I did this in the description of the course, because it's something you need to know about FL Studio Demo, and that is that you can't save. So basically, you can still follow the lectures without saving, but if you exit it, you're not going to get your track back. You're not going to have any information here. So if you want to build a song, end up with the song that we produced during the course, you'll have to leave FL Studio open the whole time, or you can just follow each lecture by its own and do the stuff then. But that might be a bit annoying. So you can't save. Well, you can save, but you can't open it again unless you buy FL Studio. So make sure you understand that and just don't exit it. There is workarounds, but we're not going to go in. Alright guys, welcome to lecture number 5. In this lecture, we're going to be covering finding drum samples and also editing drum samples out of songs. So the first thing we're going to do is go into our internet browser. And I've got a link here. Oops, copied it twice. So you should be able to see that. If you can't, it says hexawe.net/mess /200.drum.machines, and that'll bring you to this page here. All you need to do is click on drums.zip and save it to wherever you want. I like to make a new folder called samples, and I've done that in here. So I've got samples there. That's where I put all my samples. I'm not going to download it because I already have, but save it to a folder called samples in your documents, wherever, and we'll get on to the next step. So once we've done that, we have to tell FL Studio that the samples we just downloaded are lying in our samples folder. So what we're going to do is click on, open up the browser if you haven't, click on this down facing arrow, and go down to configure extra folders. Now you'll probably just have one thing here. I've got production samples, which is where my path is, so you have to find the folder where you saved those samples. It doesn't have to be the sample itself, just the folder that they lie in. After you've done that, click this backwards arrow thing, and it will say read structure, or you can click Control R on your keyboard, and that'll just refresh it. And you should find something that just says drums, and you'll have all this stuff underneath. Now these are all drum machines. Some of them don't sound that good, some of them sound amazing. That's one sample bank pretty much. If you want other samples, you can download them for free by searching for free drum samples, or you can pay for them. I've paid for quite a lot, and I personally think that the paid ones are better than the free ones. That's my opinion. You can get a lot of free samples that sound great. So the next thing we're going to do is edit a sample out of a song, and we could just find a kick that we could be listening to a song, we find a kick that we really like and we want to use in our own song. Now sampling's cool, sampling from other songs is cool, as long as it's not obviously from that song. So if you sampled the vocal line or the guitar track from say Stairway to Heaven by Led Zeppelin, and you tried selling your song, you'd get in trouble. And sort of breaks the copyright laws. So if you can find a sample that's quite vague and common, then you should be alright. And in electronic music, a lot of the drum samples are already sampled from other songs or free banks and stuff like that, so it's not a big deal. So what we're going to do is find a song that has a naked kick, and by that I mean a song that starts usually an extended mix that has a kick without anything else at the beginning. For example, this song here. You can hear that the kick just hits by itself with nothing else. So we're going to drag that in, and you'll be able to hear the naked kick. So all we have to do here is click C on our keyboard, and drag about here to cut it, slice it, and then go to your draw tool or click P and delete all of this. After that, you're going to click up in this top left corner here and go down to make unique as sample. You'll come up with this box, just click yes, and it will tell you to save it somewhere. Just click save, and once you've done that, we're going to edit the sample so we can drag it into our channel, into our kick channel. So scroll down, edit sample, and you'll see that it comes up here. Now what we're going to do is just get rid of this beginning part because we don't want that. And you can cut some of the end off, but it doesn't matter too much. So after we've done that, we've edited the sample a bit. We're going to click this here. It says drag copy sample selection, and that is one from the right. We're going to drag that into our kick channel, and if we fill each 4 steps, we've got a solid kick. So that's pretty much the basics of sampling. It can get quite a lot more complicated than that, but we're not going to go into that in this course because it is an introduction course. I hope this helped. In the next lecture we're going to be covering finding the right. Hey guys, welcome to lecture 6, and this is going to be a short lecture covering the different samples used in different music genres and why we use them. So I've got 4 different music genres here, all electronic music, but the drums sound different in all of them. And I'll just quickly be going over each one, play a couple of seconds, and then I'll tell you why the samples are used like that. So first of all, we've got a trance track, and this is Ashley Wallbridge feat. Audrey Gallagher, Bang the Drum, and it's the Omnia remix. So I'll just play this quickly. So you can hear that the sounds are quite clean. They're punchy and they're clean. They sound nice. The reason for this is because trance is very melodic and smooth sounding most of the time. And if you had like electro samples, which we're going to show you below, it would sound a bit weird. But one thing to note is that a lot of genres are just changing so much these days, and there's actually no rules in electronic music production. There's guidelines, but you can break those rules and you can be really creative and come up with new stuff. So the next track is an electro track. It's Girl on Boy by Wolfgang Gartner, and we're going to hear a massive difference between the drums in this track and the first track, so I'll just play it quickly. So the first thing you might notice is that it sounds dirty. It sounds very grainy and not as clean like this. It's still punchy, but there's a lot of stuff going on. First of all, the kick. It's layered with a lot of other stuff, maybe a clap and some white noise, and the clap's big. So the reason for this, having these kind of samples, is that electro house music is very, it's got a lot of dirty basses, a lot of distortion, and the drum samples, those dirty drum samples, just go with it really. If you used punchy, clean samples, it might still work, but it wouldn't sound as full, if you know what I mean. So this track here is a deep house track. It's the club edit of Ben Pearce, What I Might Do. And I'll just play this quickly for you from the second section.
I knew just what it had to be when I heard you say what you said to me. Appetite for the night.
So if you listen closely to the drums in there, you'll notice that they're not as prominent as these two tracks. Deep house is quite minimal, and normally the less you have, the better it will sound. So you can hear that the clap is not very loud in this one.
I knew just what it had to be when I heard you say.
It's not as punchy, but the unison of sounds make the song really. So in deep house you'll find a lot of more mellow sounding drums, and the hi-hat will be very prominent usually. Onto our last track, we have a dubstep track. So dubstep is different to the rest in the fact that it's not a solid 4x4 beat. It sounds more like real drums. So we'll just go through this quickly. Play from about here. So you can hear in this track that we actually have a snare. These other three tracks have claps, but this is a snare. So the reason for this is because dubstep needs that solid punch through, because typically the snare is not on top of the kick. In these three tracks you'll have a clap on top of the kick, and this one you don't. So you need a snare that sounds full. I'm not going to go into too much detail why, but I'm just going to show you the samples one by one. So the kick is it's punchy again. It's not as clean as a trance or deep house track. And the snare, if you listen closely, it's quite punchy, and it sounds pitched. It sounds pitched up. It sounds very snappy. And this is similar to electro. It has to punch through the big sounding basses and things like that. So I know this is a short lecture. I'm just trying to cover some stuff. One tip though, and this is your homework, is to go away and listen to different music genres and listen to the drums in them. Spot the differences between certain music genres and find some patterns. And in the next lecture we're going to be talking about, what's up guys, welcome to lecture 7. In this lecture we're going to be making our own drum beat, which is pretty exciting. It's the first time we actually get to use FL Studio for something cool. So basically you need to download the supplementary material, which should be near this lecture somewhere. That basically contains 6 samples. It contains a kick, a clap, 2 hi-hats and some percussion. The reason we're using that is because, I've got it here, is because even though we got those samples, you might not have got them, you don't really need them, those drums from the website, they don't actually sound that good for what we're trying to do. A lot of the time I only use those samples for, where are they? For effects and percussion, which you'll find they're useful later, but at the moment we need some good sounding samples right off the bat. So unzip the folder that you downloaded and locate the kick sample. It just says kick. First of all, yeah, you have to have an empty template. So go new from template, minimal, and then go to empty. and you'll end up with just this, just a sampler and your mixer. And we're going to turn the tempo here, click and drag or use your mouse wheel down to 128. This is probably the most common tempo used in electronic dance music. So we'll go back to our samples folder and drag kick into the sampler. We're going to colour this as blue. I just like to colour my stuff, you don't have to do this. And then we're going to link selected channels, right click on insert one and go to link selected channels to this track. You can also just click Ctrl L on your keyboard and you'll see that this automatically renames it. Now we're going to drag the volume down a bit. I'm not going to go into why, but basically when you have a lot of sounds all at the same volume, it sort of combines and it makes the volume here go over the number 0, which is not good. It distorts and it sounds really ugly. So we're going to right click on our kick channel and go down to fill each 4 steps. Now you can do this manually, you can just click in, but it's much faster to just right click, fill each 4 steps, and we'll click play. Make sure you've got pattern ticked and not song ticked. Let's see how this sounds. So you can hear it might not be very loud. I normally click this little knob here and just drag it all the way up. That turns the channel volume to 100%. I don't know why FL Studio leaves it at 80%, but it really annoys me. So that's a bit better. So we just got a basic kick there. See, that wasn't hard at all, was it? I mean, this is the first step to making electronic music and doesn't involve much skill, but there's a lot more to it. So next thing we're going to do is locate our clap sample. It's just called clap, and drag it into here, onto the empty one, not onto the kick. If you drag it onto the kick, it will just replace the kick sample, and it will also rename it. We don't want that. So we're going to colour this blue again. We're going to colour all our drum stuff blue just because it will help us keep organised, and when we move on to bass we'll probably put that a different colour. So same thing, we're going to go into insert 2, the next one, and go link selected channels to this track, and you'll see that it renames it. I'm just going to lower this below the kick a bit, and we'll turn it up if it's not loud enough. And we're just going to click here on the 2nd and 4th beat, and you may notice this, but if I play it, you can hear that the clap actually sounds after the kick. And if we have a look at the waveform of the sample, which is down here, you can see that the loudest part is actually after the actual line. So when you put a sample here, it plays from the beginning. So what we need to do is right click on our clap channel and go send to piano roll, and you see all these notes, and you may be thinking, notes on a sample, that doesn't make much sense. But if I click up here, you can hear the pitch changes. Again, it's not very loud. You can hear the pitch changes. So what we need to do is go Control A to select all, and just hold Alt, the Alt key down on your keyboard. Make sure you've got the draw tool selected or this won't work, or the paint tool. And hold down Alt and just drag across a little bit. Make sure you don't copy it. If you copy it, it will be twice as loud. So just drag it over a little bit. You can go Control and your mouse wheel to zoom in, and we'll just click play to see how that sounds. And you can see that that's much more punchy, and it sounds on the beat, sort of. So just drag that down a bit. So already we've got quite a nice sounding drum section, and this is going to be the foundation for our song. But there's just a lot missing from this. I mean, it's 2 sounds and it's incredibly boring. So what we're going to do, go back into our samples folder and locate hat 1, drag hat 1 in, colour it blue, and we're going to go to insert 3, link select channels to this track, and pull it down to about here. But you know, you do this by ear. If it sounds too loud, then pull it down. If it's not loud enough, then pull it up. Your ear will get used to it after a while. So on hat 1, we're going to do a bit of a different pattern. We're going to fill in all of them at once, so just drag across, but we're going to right click on each one in between the 2 kicks, in the middle of the 2 kicks. So it will be this one, this one, this one, and this one. This is because we're going to put our second hi-hat in this place. So if we listen to that, it will sound a bit different. That's not a bad volume already. I would leave it around there. We're going to do some stuff to that in the next lecture. We're going to change it up quite a lot. So we're going to our samples folder, get hat 2, colour it blue, and link it to insert 4. Drag this down just above hat 1. We want it to be a bit louder than hat 1, and we're going to put it in the gaps. I'm going to take a listen to that. So straight away I noticed that hat 1 is way too loud compared to hat 2. So what I'm going to do is pull hat 1 down. I'm going to turn the channel volume of hat 2 up a bit, and we'll see how that sounds. That sounds quite a lot better. So that there is not a bad drum beat. I mean, it's on its way, but we need a few more things, and I'm going to put some percussion in just to give it a bit of a groove. The way I see it, groove is a very important thing in dance music. Energy and groove. You can have the best mix down, and by that I mean the best sounding song in terms of production quality, but if there's no energy or no groove, it's kind of pointless. So we'll go into our samples folder and drag perk 1 in. Perk just means percussion. I like to shorten it, and we're going to colour this blue and link it to insert 5. Alright, drag this down a bit. I mention this now, but I like to drag it down too much and then turn it up. It's much better to turn something up to match the others instead of turn it down from the top. I will actually go into detail now. I'm not saying that you should turn everything up if you can't hear it, but basically if you start a sample from the bottom and then turn it up until you can hear it well, it's much better than going all the way to the top and then turning it down until it's not too loud. You might be very confused right now, and I'm sorry that I can't explain it well, but I'll try my best to in other lectures. So stick it about there, and we're going to place this one just before the kick and the other on the same offbeat between the kick as hat 2, so there. And we'll click play to see how that sounds. I will turn that up a little bit. So that's starting to get there. It's got a bit of a swing going on. So we're just going to do a similar thing with Tom 1. Drag Tom 1 in and rename it to blue. And we'll link this to insert 6 and pull it down a bit. Now on this one we're going to place 1 just after the kick here, and over here on the same offbeat as the hat 2. And we'll play that. So if you've got to this stage, you should be pretty proud of yourself. You've just made your first ever drum beat. In the next lecture, we're going to be making it more alive, give it more motion and more feeling. So that should be cool. But your homework is, before you watch the next lecture, is to play around with stuff. You could try finding a snare. I'll just do this quickly. Find a snare or something and stick it in here on the offbeat or something like this. There's a lot of no rules, but find out what sounds good, what doesn't sound good, and just play around with volume and also placement on here. And I'll see you in the next lecture. Alright guys, so hopefully you've still got the same drum beat you made in the last lecture, lecture 7. In this lecture we're going to be making some changes to this to make it sound more alive, give it some more motion. There's a couple of things we're going to do, but the first thing is putting it into the playlist, and this is really important. So make sure you've got pattern 1 up here, and go to your draw tool, your paint tool, sorry, which is B on your keyboard, and just drag in till you get to number 9. Don't fill in number 9. That's what we call, each of these is a bar. A bar contains 4 beats. So we're going to put in 8 bars, which is 32 beats. Yes. Bit slow on my math there. So we've got pattern 1. First thing we're going to do is play around with this hat 1. If you listen closely, you can hear that it sounds sort of straight. If I mute these, it sounds quite boring. So what we're going to do is change the velocity of these. There's 2 ways to do this. You can select this and then go into graph editor and change the velocity here, but I prefer to do it in the piano roll. So I'll show you this way first. You can move these down and it will change the volume. If we listen to that, you can hear the volume changing there. But like I said, I prefer to do it here. That's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is change put the first beat down a bit, the first one here, which is on each kick drum. This doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, the more random the better it sounds, I reckon. The next thing we're going to do is turn this one down quite a lot, just below there. In fact, we're actually going to put it up a bit. We're going to make them go in an ascending order, like this. And straight away you'll notice that we've got a much more lively sound. So if we play it now, you can hear that it ducks under the kick drum, sort of. So yeah, that's velocity, and you can do that on all your samples, but we're just going to do it on the hat for now. Alright, so we've got 8 bars here, and when I'm making music, I like to make something change in the drums every 4 bars. It doesn't have to be big, but just something happening. So what we're going to do is make a reverse clap, and by that I mean a clap that reverses into a reversed clap, so a reverse sample like this that comes into the next clap. So what we're going to do for that is right click on the clap, go down to clone, and you see we've got clap number 2 there. We're going to rename this to reverse clap, and we're going to link it to a new mixer channel. Drag this down a bit. Now we're going to open up the sample channel settings and highlight this reverse thing down here, and you'll see that it reverses a sample, and we've got this. Now this part's quite difficult. You have to find the right spot for it. So normally I'll click around here because our next clap is hitting on this beat here, so we want it to lead into that clap. So it's basically a matter of playing around and finding what sounds best. So you see that was too early. What we're going to do is go into the piano roll, hold down our Alt key and move it forward a little bit. That's not too bad. And you can hear that gives it some variation. Except I should have really changed it. We've got a problem now in that this is on every single pattern and we only want it to be on the fourth one. So what we're going to do is right click on pattern 1 and go clone, and then on pattern 1 delete this. So this is an initial pattern we had, and now we've got just pattern 2 with the reverse clap. So if we right click to delete one at each end and put 2 in, we've got some change going on. So that's pretty much it for this lecture. It's just 2 pretty cool things that you can do to make your drums more alive. There's a lot of other stuff you can do. I'm not going to go into it too much because it's more advanced techniques, but definitely play around with velocity, and you can even do it with toms. Maybe have a lead up to a tom like this. Just be creative, try things out. Okay guys, welcome to lecture 8. And now we're on to bass. We've covered drums pretty quickly, and we're going to talk about the next important thing, which is bass. And bass and drums have to work well together for a good song. They are the foundations of a good song. So I've got 4 tracks here that we're just going to listen to, and each one of them, the bass is different, and I'm just going to quickly explain how the bass works in each one. So if we listen to the first one, which is a remix of my song Summer Hail, we'll hear that the bass is quite constant, and it ducks underneath each kick and pops out in between it, and you'll be able to see this if I zoom in on the waveform. That is the bass there. Alright. So you can hear that it's not broken up. It's one sound. It stops somewhere between here and then continues again. This part here. What that does is it provides impact, and throughout the song it keeps doing that. So that's the first one. Now on to the next one. This has the bass as the main sound. In this track it actually goes on later to have a lead on top of it. But in this track the bass sound is so big that you can't actually have any sounds over the top, or the mix will just sound shocking. So it takes up the whole frequency range. And we'll listen to this quickly. So you can hear that it's really big. It's a massive sound, and it's quite sudden. It doesn't carry on like this bass does. It almost sounds like a heavy guitar, like a metal guitar. So on to the next track. This track is more, and that's Emma Hewitt Rewind, the Meekest remix. This track here is more of a trance track. It's got a similar bass line to this, except it's more stabby, more of a definitive sound. So we'll listen to this. So that's sort of like if you play guitar, that's sort of like a pluck muted muted bass, and it's sort of like a rolling bass. It rolls along underneath the kick, and again it ducks underneath the kick, and we can hear this if we listen closely. That's done through an act called sidechaining, which we'll get into later when we program our bass. And the last bass is from a song called Voltage and Diamond Traders. It's called Dirty Prince. It's sort of a complextro song. It's quite slow. It's about 120 beats per minute, but we'll hear a lot of different sounds in this, and it's more broken up than the other three because it's a much different genre. So we'll quickly listen to this. See, it's very creative. There's a lot of automation going on there, and a lot of different sounds. So I encourage you to listen to some music and listen to the bass lines in regards to the drums. So I'll see you in the next lecture. We're going to be looking more into bass lines, including making our own, programming our own bass line. What's up, guys? Welcome to lecture 10. In this lecture we're going to be programming our first bass line. So first things first, we're going to split up our drum channels because it's much easier to solo tracks and it's much more organized. So to do that, we're going to go to pattern 1 on our pattern selector, right click and go split by channel, and you'll see they're all under here. They're all stacked on top of each other, so we're just going to delete all of this, and you can do that by clicking E on your keyboard, selecting it and just clicking delete. Next thing we're going to do is make sure we've got pattern 1 selected and drag it out. Go up to pattern 2, and you can also click plus or minus on your keyboard to flick through patterns. Pattern 2, that's our clap, drag it out 8, and do that with the rest of the channels. Apart from pattern 7, we don't want pattern 7 in there. So that's that. So we've also got that reverse clap we need to put in. So to do that, we're going to right click on track 3 and go insert 1. So we've got a blank track up here. Find our reverse clap, which is here, click on this to get into the piano roll. Go Control A, Control C to Control A, Control C to copy. Delete pattern 7 because we don't need it anymore. Go up to stay in pattern 7, sorry, and go to piano roll. Paste it, and that's our reverse clap. And we can just put this in our playlist every 4 bars to add that movement again. What you can do is rename all these. Kick, color it blue, whatever. You can also color these if you want. So if you want to do that, it's just right click, rename color, and click on this left corner. It's got a little icon here. Should be able to see it there. And that's rename color again. I'm not going to do that because it's trying to keep these short, but that's how you do it, and that's how you keep organized. So the first thing we're going to do is make a track for our bass. And one thing to note is that these tracks do not correspond to mixer tracks. So for example, I could mute this track here, and I could drag the kick down to the bass section, and we would still hear it if I click to play. So it's important that you understand that. So we've got our bass track. We need to set up a bass channel. So we're going to right click on our pattern selector and go to find first empty. This will bring us to an empty pattern, and this is where we're going to make our bass. So we're going to go insert, and we're going to choose a synth, and we're going to get more into synths in the sound design section in the next section, but for now just pick 3x OSC. That stands for 3 times oscillator, and an oscillator is basically one of these, and an oscillator makes a sound. So we're going to rename this bass 1, and we'll make it yellow. If you don't like the fact that it's not below all the drum sections. You can go Control Shift and scroll with your mouse wheel to move it around. We're just going to change the sound up a bit. So we're going to program our bass first. We need to link it to a mixer track. So link selected channels to this track. We'll keep the volume quite high. We don't know how loud it's going to be. So right click, go to piano roll, and we'll start programming our bass. This is the sound we've got at the moment. It's a basic sine wave, so we're going to change that a little bit. It's be hard to see, but drag the volume down on this all the way to the bottom. Change this thing here to the middle wave. This is a saw wave. That one there. And turn the OS oscillator 1 course CRS down to -12, and you'll see it up here when you move it. So -12. -12 semitones is an octave, and that means that it'll sound the same. It'll have the same note. It won't sound weird when you play this. So we're gonna start programming our bass. So pick that note there, nice F sharp, always sounds good. We're just going to make something simple, so if you want to input the same notes as I am, just to get an idea. So now we can drag this into our playlist, and it's going to sound really bad, okay, if you ever listen. Couple of reasons for this. It's a very basic sound. We're going to cover this more in our sound design tutorial. You can feel free to play around with this now and see what each thing does. That would be good, but it's not going to sound perfect straight away. One thing we should probably do is change the percussion, because you can see that this percussion here, and we'll mute all these tracks that we don't need. It's not bad, but it sounds kind of weird. Now if we get the percussion to follow the actual bass, I think it would sound better. So we'll do this. So we've got this here, that's the start of a note. Change it from here to here, and change this one to here. So if you look closer, you can see that they start at the same time, the bass and the percussion. So it's starting to sound a lot better. That's the first sort of bass lecture that we actually do something. In the next lecture we're going to be adding movement to it. Alright guys, welcome to lecture 11. In this lecture we're going to be adding some movement and variation to our bass. The reason why I'm teaching this is because electronic music can get quite boring quite fast if there's not little things happening. Because it's mainly based off loops. So this is a loop. This here. If we think of that as a loop, it's repeating itself. It's not changing. So every 4 bars or so, it's really important to have something that stands out. It's just a bit different, but it's still part of a song. So that's why we're doing variation and movement, to make things more interesting. So first thing we're going to do is change our bass sound a little bit. I don't want to go too much into this because we'll be covering it in our sound design section, but it doesn't sound that good just at the moment. So what we're going to do is bring up this second oscillator here. So we're going to change it to a square wave, and this will give it a more give it a nicer sound, not too distorted. So our square wave is this one, the third one from the left. We're going to turn the volume up to 30%. Make sure it's about 30% exactly, and you can see it up here, of course. If we just listen to that now. So you can see it sounds a little bit more high pitched, but it's actually a nicer sound. If you turn the chorus down, it's far too low, so we'll leave it at 12. So we've got this here. Next thing we're going to do is add a filter to it. This section here is called the ADSR envelope, and we'll get into that in the sound design section. I'm not going to cover it now. So we're going to click the down arrow on this filter section here. Basically, mod X is the low pass, is the filter cutoff, which means that if we have a low pass, it will cut off the high frequencies as you pull this down. So I can give you an example of this. If we play the pattern, got pattern selected up here. See, as I pull that down, the high frequencies go away. They get cut off. I'll show you a visual representation of that in the sound design, in the EQ section. But for now, we're going to change this fast LP to an SVLP times 2, just because it has a nicer sound. So if we listen to this, it's a nice sounding filter. This mod Y knob is called the resonance, and that's basically it's basically the frequencies that get past the filter. And to explain it simply, I'll get into that in the EQ section as well. But if we have the filter cut off here, you can see that some of it's coming up. It's basically a peak in the cutoff section, but that might be a bit confusing, so we won't go into that too much. So with this low pass filter, what we're going to do is we're going to automate it, and this is sort of a new thing. We haven't automated anything yet, but automation is basically changing the value of something, whether it be a filter or the volume of a sound, during the song. It may sound a bit daunting, but it's actually very easy to do. So all we need to do is right click on our mod X, which is our filter cutoff, go down to create automation clip, and you'll see that it comes up here. You can color this by clicking up here or name the track, doesn't matter. So to add a bit of movement, we're just going to make it constantly change. So for example, we might want it to go down and then back up, and not too drastically, not all the way down. So if we do this, actually go to there, make it short, and then make sure you have it selected, and keep clicking until you've got 4. So that's a simple way to do it. And if we listen to this now, you can see that it has a bit of movement. What we're going to do on the second one is add a little variation to it. So we'll just come over here. This is the second bar, and we'll just make it go low to high. Oh yeah, automation clips. To make a point, you right click, and you can right click to delete it again. Use your left mouse button to drag one. So basically what we're doing here is on the second 2 notes, or the last 2 notes of the bar, it's going to go up. It's going to start off low, and the frequencies are going to go up. So if we listen to this, so that gives it a nice sound. It's a bit more interesting than it was. Next thing we're going to do is add some delay to it, and fortunately you can do this in 3x oscillator. All we're going to do is turn this feed button up a little bit, probably to about 10%, 12%, whatever. and you can hear that it has that slight delay. If we mute these channels here, or these tracks here, you might be able to hear it better. So that's pretty cool. The last thing we're going to do is add a little bit of variation, like we did with this reverse clap at the end of 4 bars. So we're going to change the pattern, and the easiest way to do this is use the existing pattern. So if we click on this pattern here on the 4th bar, we click on this top left part where there's a little icon and go down to make unique. You'll see that the name's changed to pattern 9. It's a brand new pattern, and if we change what's in this pattern here, it will not affect these ones here. So what we're going to do is go to the last note, drag it to 1/4 of its size, so it covers 2 things, and make 2 of them. So it's basically that split in quarters and doubled. So if we see how that sounds as a pattern, so it's just a nice little effect at the end of every 4 bars, and this is how it sounds. And we'll put it at the end of this bar as well. So your action point is to, I hope you copied me doing this, but play around with the automation. Try automating some other things, such as the resonance or the volume of this, even the pitch, which you can do up here. Play around with that, see what sounds cool, make different variations. For example, you could put this one closer to the end, all that kind of stuff. Play around, have some fun, and I'll see you in the next lecture. What's up, guys? Welcome to lecture 12. This is the first lecture in our synths and leads section, which is pretty cool. In this section we're going to be covering a bit of music theory, and in the next section we're going to be covering sound design. So this might be a bit more boring, but I'll try and make it fun and interesting as much as I can. In this lecture we're just going to be running through a few songs like I did with the bass lines. So these 4 songs have different leads, different synths. I'm just going to be going through why those fit, why they sound the way they do, and stuff like that. So the first song it's actually my song. It's called Zafira. It's a free download, so I'll put a link in the lecture description for you. So I'll just play this quickly, and then I'll sort of run through why it sounds like that. So there's 2 sounds in there. There's 2 synth sounds. One's quite wide. The one playing the chords, and chords make it sound thick. It's quite wide, and if you're using headphones, and you should be, either using good headphones or good speakers for this course, you'll hear that it covers quite a range. You'll hear in your right and left there well, and compared to something like a kick, which is just in the middle, it'll sound much wider. So we've got that's playing the chords, which is quite a simple progression, and over the top we've got this pluck sound, which works in unison with the chords. So we'll just listen to that. So it plays a melody over the top, which works quite nicely. So the reason I chose those sounds when I was making that song is because I started with the bass line first, and the bass line was quite soft. I don't know if you can hear it that well. You can hear it underneath, it's quite mellow, so overall that song, it doesn't need harsh sounds, and it worked well actually. So on to the next song. This is more of a trancier track. It's called Neutrino, and it's by Matt Davey. And I'll just play this real quick, you can have a listen to it. So you can hear that there's not chords in that one, but it's just a straight melody, and the effect this has, it's quite uplifting, especially with the sound it is. It's quite a typical trance lead, very pitchy, quite harsh in a way, but it does sound nice, and it's very uplifting. I think I've said that already, but you get the idea. So we'll just listen to that one more time. Alright. So the next track is Tritonal featuring Christina Soto, Still With Me, and it's a 7 Lines remix. It's just more dubstep, but it's actually sort of a different form of dubstep, and the main lead in this is quite interesting, so we'll have a quick listen. So it's the same family of sound as the chord, the lead in here, but it's a lot more harsh and most likely based around square waves. It goes with the song, it goes with the bass that's been used next to it, and it doesn't play the whole time like it does, like I do in this one. So you can hear it happens in sections. Stops there, starts again, stops, starts again, which creates this sort of impact. Really, when the synth hits, it sounds nice because there's been such a pause between it. So that's the third track. Now this last one, there's actually no sort of melodic or progressive anything involved really. It's just one note, and you'll hear it pitching up at the beginning, and when it drops it just stays the same note, and you'll be surprised how much impact this has as something so simple, one note. In fact, it's normally something that just has one note or one progression is a lot easier to dance to. It's more aimed at clubs, especially electro tracks. They have one note playing the whole time. So we'll just listen to this. So you might find that boring, but in an environment such as a festival or a club, it would work. And the sound itself is quite different. It's kind of pitched. It's almost like a pluck. Yeah, quite a harsh pluck. I think by itself it wouldn't sound too great, but yeah, that's lecture 12. I'd suggest listening to a few of your favourite songs and listening closely to how the synths work in unison with the bass, what kind of chord progressions they have. Alright guys, welcome to lecture 13, and in this lecture we're going to be making our first chord progression. So this course isn't actually about music theory, but I'm not going to be covering it in depth. There's plenty of resources out there to learn music theory if you want. It's not essential for making electronic music, but it does help a bit, so I'll link some of those websites in the description. But today we're just going to be making our first chord progression. So when it comes to chord progressions, I like to use plucks or leads. Today we're going to use a simple pluck sound. I don't know if you've heard of Dead Mouse, or a lot of trance has it. It's just that nice sounding pluck, progressive pluck sound. So what we're going to do is go into our new pattern, which is pattern 10, and we're going to insert a 3x oscillator, just like we did for our bass. Again, if this is an annoying position for you, just go Control Shift and scroll down with your mouse wheel, and we'll rename this to Synth 1 and make it green or any color you want, just as long as it's different from yellow or blue, because that's our bass. And we will link it to channel insert 9, and drag the volume down a bit. So at the moment we've got the basic sound, which is pretty boring. Actually, we'll turn this up a bit. Pretty boring. So we're going to change that. But first of all, we're going to actually make up chord progression. So one thing I like to do, and this will help if you're not aware of scales and keys and that kind of thing, is go into your master channel, or any channel. I like to use a master channel. Click down on one of these here, which is to insert an effect, and find picture. It'll come with FL Studio demo. So you've got picture up. Make sure you uncheck this green light. That means it's off. If it's on, your song will sound really bad. It does quite some weird stuff to it. So we're going to change our key to F sharp minor, because when we made our bass track, that was the bass note. So we've got F sharp minor here, and these highlighted notes are the ones we can use in our scale. They're the ones that sound nice. If we go outside of that, it might sound a bit weird. You can do it when you know a lot of music theory, but we're going to stay inside the scale for now. So if we open up our picture, right, while I'm making my chord progression, I like to turn this to detached. If you click on the upper left arrow and go down to detached, it means that while you're working on something, it stays there and it doesn't click away. So if you want to do that, go down to detached, and we'll start making our chord progression. So basically, when I start making a chord progression, I'll start with the root note. So we've got F sharp 4, which sounds nice to start on. So we're just going to start putting in our pattern. And if you want to copy the notes I'm putting in here, so it will sound like this. Alright. Now to build a simple chord, you basically just go up 2 on this scale. So I'll go from F sharp to A and put that in. In fact, all you need to do, select this, Control C, Control V, drag it up to A, and to select you use your E, or the select tool here. And we're going to copy that again and paste it up to C sharp, because if you look at this, we go from F sharp to A, jump again to C sharp. So if we listen to this, it sounds really bad, and that's because we haven't actually designed our sound yet. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start making our sound. So pop into 3x oscillator. It is a bit small, you might not be able to see that well, but we're basically going to change oscillator 1 to a saw wave, oscillator 2 to a saw wave as well, and turn the volume down on oscillator 3, all the way down. Next thing we're going to do is turn the CRS knob up to +0 semitones, so it's the same as this, and you'll see it up here. Now it sounds like this, and it's actually a lot louder. It might have hurt your ears. So we'll turn that down a little. It still sounds pretty average. So what we're going to do is go into this tab here like we did with our bass. We're going to turn the attack knob all the way down. We're going to turn the release knob all the way down pretty much. Turn the hold knob all the way down. We'll have a listen to it because it's good to do this by ear. Yeah, so turn the hold completely down, turn sustain to about 9 o'clock and decay to about 10 o'clock. It'll sound something like this. So it's already starting to sound a bit like a pluck, but it's too open. So what we need to do is go into our filter section and choose low pass times 2. Drag this down to about 11 o'clock, about here. You can barely hear it. And we're going to make this, we're going to give the character to the sound by going into our cut tab, which is a filter cutoff, which is this thing here. Bringing down attack completely, hold, no release, no sustain, and now we're going to turn the amount up to about there, about 2 o'clock. And adjust our decay until it sounds nice. So it doesn't sound too bad if you want to have a look at those settings there. Next thing we're going to do is going to turn it up again a bit so we can hear it well. The microphone's quite loud compared to the FL Studio sound. So now we're going to work on our actual chord progression. We've got just a single chord here repeating itself. We're going to select all of this by pressing E. Control C, Control V, change back to our draw tool, which is P, and drag this to, we'll go down to D, and you can pretty much do whatever you want. You can move to any root note, but to create a progressive sound and a nice sounding chord progression, you want to use specific sort of notes, which I'll link to in the description. It'll take a while to explain, but we're going to go down to D, and it normally sounds not too bad. But you'll notice that we've got an F here, and an F is not in our scale. So what we need to do is select this F and move it up. You can do that by holding down Shift and clicking your up key, or using P to drag it. So if we have a listen to this, see that it doesn't sound too bad, still sounds a bit dry. We're going to click Control V again to get our original chord, and we're going to drag this one to E. So this is moving back up to F. And again you'll notice that we've got a G here, and you're not supposed to have a G in this scale. So we'll drag it up to the nearest one, which is G sharp. And have a listen to that. What we're going to do is just copy this here and repeat it for the next bar. So this is our chord progression. It's simple, but it sounds nice. So we're not going to add that into our song yet. We're going to see if it works in the next lecture. One thing you can do to spice up your sound a bit is add some delay. In the function tab, we're going to turn our time up to about between 12 and 2 o'clock. Turn the feed up a bit and enable ping pong. You'll have to play around with this time knob a bit. until you get it sound right. So at the moment our bass doesn't follow the chord progression, but we could probably use this first chord, see what it sounds like. Yeah, so in the next section we're going to change our bass sound to follow this, and we're also going to be looking. Alright guys, welcome to lecture 14. In this lecture we're going to be adding some change to our chord progression, just a small change, and we're also going to be making our bass follow the chord progression. So in the last lecture I quickly put pattern 10, which is our chord progression, on top of the bass, and it sounded quite weird when it got to the second bar, because basically the root note of the second chord is D, and the note of this chord is F sharp, and although they're in the same scale, they just don't work. It's not that they don't work well, but they can sound better. So if we listen to this without the change in bass, you might be able to hear what I'm talking about. So this second bar sounds kind of odd. So we're going to change that. We're going to change our bass. We're not actually going to change pattern 8 as a pattern, because we're going to use it later when we get to our arrangement stage. But what you're going to do is you're going to delete basically every single one after the first of each 4 bars, because we're going to click on this top left of the pattern, a little icon, and go down to make unique. Basically this makes it a new pattern, which means if we change the notes in here, it will not change pattern 8. So we're just going to drag this out, and it's blank at the moment. That's all good. So make 2 pattern 9, so they're like that. And we're going to go into our chord progression and find the bottom note, and it's not always, doesn't always work like this. There is a such thing called chord inversions, which basically means I could put this D up here and it would still be the same chord. It would just sound a bit different. But we're going to use the bottom note because that's the root note of our chord. So F sharp is the first one, and if we check on our bass, F sharp, that's good. Second chord is D, so we have to add our D in. We're not going to follow the same pattern as the chord progression. We're going to use the same pattern as we've already got for our bass. So if you select this, copy it, then paste, click P and move it down to D. There we go. Oops. Alright. So at the moment we've just got this. And you might have heard there that when it changes from the F to the D, you hear this bad noise in the middle. So what we're going to do is just reduce the delay on there a bit. Basically reduce the time. Actually the feedback, there we go. That's a bit better. You might not notice that, it's just a little thing. Alright, so we go back into our chord progression and find the last note, because remember this is just one chord for these 2 bars. So it's an E. So we'll go back into our bass pattern, pattern 9. You can just copy from before, copy twice, and put it in like that. Make sure it snaps into place properly. Alright, so that's our full bass pattern that follows the chord progression. We'll just have a quick listen to that by itself. Now we'll listen to it with the chords. So first thing I notice is that the pluck is a bit too loud, so I'll just turn that down. That sounds pretty good. Now we can make some small changes to our chord progression. Normally I like to keep it simple, but or otherwise it starts turning into a melody. But basically, end of every 8 bars or even 4 bars, we could add a little thing to the end. Like, what we're going to do is delete this last note here, this whole chord, and drag this one out to the end. And then we could move up that to E and see how that sounds. That's not too bad. The next thing we should probably do is add automation. So because we added automation to our bass filter cutoff, so we're going to do it to our pluck to make it, give it a bit more movement. So we'll go into our synth channel settings, go to the insert tab, INS, and right click on our mod X knob and go create automation clip. We're going to rename this to pluck because we forgot to do that before. Actually synth 1, sorry, synth 1, and now we've got this automation clip, and I just made a notch in it. So what we can do is at the end of every 4 bars, maybe have it curve up a bit like this, not too much, and bring it back down again. We'll see how that sounds. You have to do this by ear. You can see it came up, it actually came a lot louder. So what we're going to do is also automate the channel volume, which is here. We're not going to do the track volume because when we get to our mixing down stage, it can get quite tricky with volume automation. This volume here and this volume on here are actually different. So we're going to automate that, create automation clip, and as this goes up, we'll bring the volume down a little bit. See how that sounds. So it doesn't sound too bad. Pretty much just go wild with automation, play around with stuff. You can change your resonance. You know, just experiment because that's how you learn. So that's it for this lecture. And the next lecture we're going to be making a melody out of this. So this is lecture 16, and in this lecture we are going to add a melody to our chord progression. First things first, if you're wondering why this looks a little bit different to FL Studio in the other lectures, it's because this is an updated lecture. I've actually re-uploaded this and I've got FL Studio 11 now. So just getting that out of the way. So at the moment we've got this chord progression here, pattern 11 and 12. Pattern 12 has our little note to change at the end, and we want to add a melody to this. And normally a melody in a song is the memorable part. It's what gets stuck in our head. And for this course we're just going to make a simple melody, just so you can understand how to make one from a chord progression. So if we go to our pattern 11 first of all, and we'll just start adding some notes in to create a melody. So what we can do is actually build our melody on top of this chord progression. Though what I want you to do first is actually find an F sharp minor scale, and you can do this by basically Google F sharp minor scale, which is what we're building our song in. You can see all these pitches here. So we've got F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D and E. And you can write that down somewhere. So now when we go back to our chord progression, we know the notes that we're allowed to put in, and of course you can put a note that's not in scale. In fact, it's a common technique in music, but as a beginner, it's best not to do this. So we'll stick with the scale notes. So we'll start off with maybe an F sharp, and you can see how the difference this makes if we play the first chord without the F. You can hear that it adds quite a lot of tone to it. So we could go F to E, for example, and then maybe we could go F to A, and this is actually the same note as our one down here. And then we have to choose one to go down to. So A. I generally do this by ear. You can do it by actually knowing what notes go where. But generally you'll be able to figure out what sounds good and what sounds bad. So at the moment we've got F to E, F sharp to E, and A to F sharp. Now I think a G sharp would go good there. We've got a G sharp down here already. G sharp to E, and then we'll try G sharp to F. So yes, it is very simple, but it is a melody technically. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this, and you can do that by clicking your select tool. Of course, make sure you don't have typing to piano keyboard selected, and just select these top notes, Control C to copy them. After we've done that, we're going to add it to a new pattern. We'll insert a 3x oscillator, rename it to Synth 2, and of course change the colour. And we're going to link this to a mix track. And just turn it down a little bit. Now in our piano roll we can paste this in here. And we want sort of a long sound compared to our pluck. This is another thing you'll come across when producing music. It's good to have sounds that vary in ADSR, which is attack, decay, sustain, release. So we've got a pluck, which is a short sound. We're going to do a pair later, and then we want a long constant sound, for example. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag these notes out. If we grab the bottom ones and drag them to the end of the bar, and then all we need to do is drag these top ones. Again, you can select by using your E tool. Oops. Okay, so at the moment we've got this, and it will sound quite boring, which is just a simple sine wave. So what we're going to do is we're going to change it to a sine square, which is this one here. Then we're going to turn the volume down on the other two oscillators, and we're also going to turn the coarse down to -12 semitones. So we've got this, which is actually quite loud. Again, we'll turn it down a bit. And after that, we're going to go into our volume tab here, and we've looked a bit at the ADSR envelope when we made our pluck. Now we're going to do it a bit differently. So we want to turn the attack down a little bit. We want to turn the hold down completely, and the release down a little bit. We'll see how this sounds. So turn the decay up a bit, and now we're going to go into our filter. I'll choose a low pass 2 filter and pull it down a little. And turn the resonance up on that. Next thing we're going to do is go to our pitch envelope. So it's in the same insert tab, into pitch. We're going to turn the attack all the way down, hold everything down except decay, and turn decay down as well, then turn it up a little bit, and turn the amount up a tiny bit, almost so it's unnoticeable. And if we turn our attack down on here, you'll notice that it has a bit more punch to it. But we want to keep our attack there. So it's just a little change you can do, especially for plucks, and it's also a good way to make lasers. Now what we're going to do is put this into our playlist and add a little bit of movement to it. So just place it down here. Of course, rename this to Synth 2, Organized. And we're going to add some filter automation to it here. So if we go create automation clip, stick it in, and just have it traveling up, maybe like that. So that's pretty cool for now. One other thing we're going to do, which I haven't introduced you to yet, is volume automation to imitate the effect of sidechain compression. And you'll hear sidechain compression in a lot of songs, and it gives that pumping effect where the kick punches out and everything pumps around it. A good example of sidechain compression in a song would be Call on Me by Eric Prydz. Classic song, and it has a huge pumping sound throughout pretty much the whole track. So if you haven't heard that song, have a listen to that and you'll see what I mean. And there's a couple ways to do this in FL Studio. We can use sidechain compression, but I'm not actually covering compression in this course because it's a bit more advanced and a bit more hard to get your head around. So all we're going to do is use volume automation, which is actually pretty good anyway, as you have a lot of control over it. We're not going to use volume automation on this mixer fader, mainly because if we wanted to mix our song down later and we had volume automation on it, things get a bit tricky. So we're going to use our channel volume here, and we'll create an automation clip, and it's going to be a small automation clip, which is basically only a beat long. So we have a bar here in 4/4 signature, and we're just going to pull it down and then up like that. So the volume is pretty much just going to go up with it up after each kick, and it will sound like the kicks actually making it duck in volume. So you can hear that if we turn it up a little bit. It's a bit quiet now. So that's basically it for this lecture. Of course, it may look a little bit different after this because this is an updated lecture. So if this automation clip looks different in the next lecture, or these ones do, the reason is because they're older lectures and this one is an updated one. But this is the same, and all the concepts are the same. Hey guys, welcome to lecture 16. In this lecture we're just going to be covering waves. So waves are just a medium that energy travels through. They're not physical matter. We can't touch them really, and it's one of the things that waves are is audio. apart from light and some other things that we won't go into. My science skills aren't that good. So all our audio samples are waves. If we look at our kick in our step sequencer, we've got this waveform down the bottom. So that's a wave. So if we click on this, it'll play the kick sound. So that's a visual representation of the audio that's coming out of our speakers or headphones. Now if we look at our clap, we can see a difference. It's more bunched in. You can't see where it goes up and down like the kick. This is because it has high frequencies and more frequencies. And you'll find the same with our hats and perk 1 because they're all high frequencies. Now if we look at our tom, it doesn't have as much high frequencies, and you can see the ups and downs. But it just doesn't just stop at our samples. You might be wondering why our patterns don't show waveforms. I mean, we've got this definitely sound. If we solo this chord progression here, there's definitely sound coming there. So why is waveform? And it's because it's just in MIDI at the moment. But we can change that. So if we wanted to bounce down our bass to see the waveform and maybe edit it a bit, we could just we could do it quite easily. If you open your mixer and you click on your bass mixer track, go down to this disc recording button, and then top left on your mixer, disc recording, render to wave files. Don't worry about that, anything there, just click start, and you'll have a audio appear down here. So this is basically our bass waveform. And if we look closely, we can see that it's at exactly the same time as your pattern. And if we mute this, which is our MIDI information, and we can also mute our automation clip, we'll hear the bass. So that's pretty cool, and that's a way to save CPU power if we need. And I also noticed something I did there. I doubled up the MIDI notes on here, which made it appear louder, and you can see that in the waveform. Sometimes it's easy to roll past mistakes like that, but you can see that this first bar is definitely louder than the rest, so we just fixed that. So that's how you see a waveform of a MIDI track. All you need to do is convert it to audio. And basically in a waveform, there's a couple of things. There's the wavelength, which is the length of these wave cycles. A wave cycle is basically from the top point to the top point to the top point again. So it would look like two semicircles inversed. They're quite hard to explain in FL Studio, and that's about it. So it's just a simple run through of waves. You don't need to know too much about them. If you do physics, you'll probably know a lot more than I do, but we're focusing on making music. We just need to know what waves are as terminology, so you know what I'm talking about in future lectures. So I encourage you to analyze the waveforms of different samples. If you have samples you've downloaded, just have a look. You can just drag them into your playlist and just zoom in on them. Have a look and notice the differences between the sounds and the waveform. Hey guys, welcome to lecture 17 as part of our sound design section. In the last lecture we talked about audio waves, what they look like in samples, for example drum samples, and we also converted our bass line to audio. I undid that because we don't really need to do that. It was just as an example, so I could teach you how. In this lecture we're going to be covering oscillator wave shapes, and they're still waves, they're still audio, but there's a little bit different. So we're going to be using 3x oscillator again for this. It's not going to be part of our song, so what we'll do is right click on any of these, insert 3x oscillator, and we'll just rename this to test, and color it whatever. I'll just do it green. Link this to a new channel, turn it down a bit. So basically on a synth, and I'll show you on another synth as well after this, but you have, on this one you have 3 oscillators. That's why it's called 3x OSC. Now an oscillator basically contains one wave or a combination of waves to make another wave, and it produces sound. So you can combine oscillators together to get a unique sound. So on each of these oscillators we have 7 different patterns. The question mark is to load your own pattern. We're not going to do that, we're not going to worry about that. To start off with, we have a sine wave. So a sine wave is the most basic of waves. It is a wave itself, like it's what people think about when they think about audio waves. So it's basically one frequency only, has no harmonics, which I'll get into. So if we play a sine wave on C, middle C, this is what it sounds like. It's not very loud. Let's turn it up a bit. So it's pretty boring. It doesn't sound bad, but it's not very interesting at all. The next way we have is a triangle. This is similar to a sine wave, but it's got a few harmonics, and harmonics are basically extra frequencies in the audio spectrum. So if I went and loaded a spectrum analyzer, you won't have this. It's a third-party plugin. It's free. If I play a sine wave, you'll see on here. Oops. You'll see on here that it's just one frequency. Well, it should be anyway. If I play a triangle wave, you've got all these up here as well. It's got extra harmonics. So triangle is better for low frequencies. For example, if we played, gives that nice sort of gritty bass kind of sound. It's a triangle wave. Now onto a square wave, and if you look at a square wave, you'll notice that it's a lot different to a sine wave. It's much more solid, blocky. In fact, if you look up here, you can see my voice moving the waves at the moment. If we play a sine wave, you'll see the difference between a sine wave and a square wave on this little monitor thing here. So you can see that's wavy, it's smooth. Now if we go to square wave, that was really loud. It's a lot different. And you can also see that it has a lot more harmonics, especially up here. It's a square wave. It's also really good for basses. Fills up a lot of the spectrum. Now the next one, and the most common, is a saw wave, and you'll hear this in pretty much every song. It's such a good sound for almost anything, basses, plucks, leads. It's just amazing, and it's, if you can see that, you might have to look closely, but it's basically just like that, and it's got a lot of harmonics. So we'll have a listen to that. Now notice the difference between a square and a saw wave. They have different harmonics, one sounds different. Make sure you can hear the difference between that. You may have to go through them a couple of times. So they're the 4 most common waves. That's all we really have to worry about. So making a sound out of waves, it comes down to experimentation. If you want a sub bass with a little bit of grit on top, and by sub bass I mean just a sine, sort of like this. If we go sine, So that's a nice sub bass, and you think, well, you know, I'd like a bit of grit on top. You might put a triangle wave up there and turn the volume up a bit. Through the pitch. It comes down to knowing what to use when, and experimentation. So one other one is just a noise wave, and this isn't common on many synthesizers, but it is on this one, so I'll just go through it quickly. No matter what key you press on the keyboard, it's just going to sound the same, because the noise oscillator has no pitch to it. It fills the entire range, and it's just noise. So if we have a look over here when I play it, oops. So you can see it doesn't fill the bottom, but it's a whole range. So it's good for filling in synth sounds or adding a bit of high end to them. So in the next section we're going to be talking about the amplitude envelope, or the oscillator envelope, which is this part here. We briefly covered this when we were making our pluck sound, but we're going to go more in depth. What's up, guys? Welcome to lecture 18. In this lecture we're going to be making another sound, which is a pad sound. If you don't know what a pad is, it's sort of an atmospheric background sound, typically used in breakdowns, and you'll hear it in a lot of trance music and ambient music. The reason for this is because it's a great way to use the amplitude envelope. So we'll be explaining that as part of our sound design section. So we've got our test thing here that we use to show off the wave shapes. So we'll just rename this to pad, and of course we will link it to, so we've got test here, we'll link it to this track. It turns out I actually didn't rename this. We'll rename this to synth 2. If that's called course, might not be. It's just a mistake there I did. So we've got pad. We've got our first empty pattern, which is pattern 14. And what we'll do is we'll go into pattern 11 to get our pluck notes. So just basically we only need the first chord of each section. So select with your E, or go up here, select the first chord, hold down shift, select the next chord, hold down shift, and select the last chord, and then control C to copy, go back into pattern 14 and paste it into our pad piano roll. Alright, all we need to do now is grab these two, change to our draw tool, which is P on your keyboard, drag it the full way, and do the same for the last, but drag it twice as long. So this will sound like this when I just turn it down a bit, because we've got noise, of course. So basically we're going to change these to saw waves. In the last lecture I talked about what the different waves were. So saw waves are great for strings and especially pads. So we'll just have a listen to that. And actually what we're going to do is add a lower note here. So basically if you get the bottom note, shift again and copy it, and then paste it. It'll be on top of these, and then drag it down. So it adds a bit more depth to the sound. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is it's just a little bit of sound design here. So we'll turn the fine knob a little bit to the left on OSC2, and on OSC1 a little bit to the right. Whoops, too much. Okay, that's cool. So that adds a bit of width to it. This one isn't even up, sorry. So turn this up. I've just added a bit of white noise down the bottom there. So we're going to be playing with our amplitude envelope. We're also going to use a filter on this pad. Pads typically need filters to sound good, but that's the next lecture. So I haven't gone through this yet properly. In our insert tab we have 5 other tabs. One is pan, which is basically your stereo field left to right. One is volume, which is the volume of your sound. One is cut, which is a filter cutoff down here. We use that to make our pluck. One is resonance, which is this knob here. And the other one is pitch. So we're going to be using volume today. So we've got a couple of knobs here. The first one is delay. It's pretty useless really. I mean, when you use delay, it delays the time between where the sound starts and where it plays. So if we turn the delay up, the sound starts here, but it will only play maybe here. So we can have a listen to that. Pretty useless. Attack basically changes how fast the sound comes in. So if we want it to fade in, we would turn the attack up. If we turn the attack down, it comes in straight away. So if we turn the attack up, which we will do for our pad, not that much. You can see that it sort of fades in a bit. Hold just holds it for the length of the chord. So if we turn hold down, you can see that it dips in volume around the midpoint. So I'll keep hold up. Now decay is the length of the sound regardless of the note. So if we turn this up, if we turn this down and hold down, you can see a very sudden dip. So hold and decay, you don't normally have a hold knob on here. It's good to play around with that. Sustain, again, it holds a note for longer. If we turn sustain up, we can hear the difference. If we turn sustain down, hold decay down, you can hear that dip in volume and it cuts off at the end. So we'll leave sustain up and hold up. And the last one is release, and release is the length of the sound after the note's been played. So if we turn release up, you could hear a long tail on it. And you can see that it actually transfers over into the next one. So we don't want it too long, but the aim is to get the release so it blends with this attack of the next note. We'll try this. That's not too bad. So that's the amplitude envelope. So we've also got the cutoff envelope, which I won't go into. If you want to have a look at that, go back to the lecture where we made our pluck. So in the next lecture we're going to be making our pad sound a little better with this filter. So we'll cut off the high frequencies and just make the sound a little better, add some reverb. Alright guys, welcome to lecture 19. In this lecture we're going to be covering filters. So in our last lecture we made a pad just in 3x OSC, and we talked a bit about the amplitude envelope and a bit about sound design in this section here with the oscillators. But as I explained, the sound at the moment is quite harsh. It has a lot of high frequencies. We can hear that if we play it. So what we want to do is cut the sound down to a more rounded sort of sound, smooth sound. So if we look at this visually, you won't have this plugin, but I'll just show you. If we play it at the moment, you've got all the stuff up here. rename this to pad. So you've got all these frequencies up here. If we put a filter on it, you'll see that these actually disappear. So let's play that. So that's pretty much what a filter does, and you can also use an equalizer, which we haven't really got into, but you could drag this down here and it would have the same effect. But we're just going to focus on the plug-in filter for now. So basically this knob here, mod X, and when you turn it down, it mutes these frequencies here, turns down the volume of the high frequencies at this end, which is always the right end. So that's called a low pass filter because it lets the lows pass. It could also be called a high cut filter because it cuts the highs. So we've got a couple of filters here. That's called fast low pass. There's also a couple more low passes. They're just some of them are a bit more harsh and cut down quicker. We've got a band pass. Now this is hard to see visually, but it basically lets two of the bands pass. For example, the highs and the lows. So if we have a look at this, it's quite hard to see, but basically visually it would look like this. If we put this down here, it will look like that, going up and down the range. So that's what a band pass does. You won't find many uses for that though. It's good for white noise and things like that. And next we've got a high pass. So if we have this turned all the way up, we probably won't hear much. Nothing at all, because all the frequencies are passed up to here. The moment we turn this down, we'll start to hear sound, but not the low frequencies. So if we ever listen to that, oops, I forgot to turn that off. That's what a high pass does. That's pretty much it. The other knob here is resonance, and visually this will be a part on your filter that basically sticks up a bit. So if we had a low pass filter, it would be something like that. That would be our resonance. So it adds a bit of a flick at the top, and we can hear this if we stick it up. So if we turn down our filter a bit, turn our resonance up, you'll hear that some of it slips through. We turn it way up, you'll hear that there's a huge peak here. That's a good effect for lasers and harsh sounds. Right now we're just going to make an automation clip for our pad using the low pass filter. So if we right click on mod X, create automation clip, we're not going to put the pad over our song here, our section here, because it just won't fit properly. It's going to be for our breakdown. So we haven't got the arrangement done yet, but we're just going to make a quick automation clip. Basically we'll start it off low and we'll build it up to about here. We'll just put a bit of a curve on it and then bring it back down and do the same thing. So we'll listen to that. It doesn't sound too bad. You can get quite creative with it. I like to do some stuff on each chord, for example, like that. You can have quite a cool effect sometimes. It's just about experimentation. And playing around with stuff. So that's it for this lecture. In the next lecture we're going to be looking at filter modulation using the cutoff envelope. What's up, guys? Welcome to lecture 20. So in this lecture we're going to be looking at filter modulation. And again, we touched on this when we were making our pluck sound. So in this sound we actually modulated our filter, except I don't really go into detail on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at two of our sounds, which is the pluck and the pad. So if we just copy this over here and go to your select tool, which is E on your keyboard, we'll just use this as our experimentation space. So if we play this, we can hear it's quite an open pluck, and you'll actually want the automation clip over here just to make sure it's actually, we'll make a new automation clip. So we'll just copy this over here, left click on the top, make unique, and then we can change this just to a flat clip without this one changing over here. So we've got this at the moment, and it's quite closed. So if we have a look at what we're doing over here, and we can hear how this changes the sound. So we've got a couple of knobs, and it's the same as our amplitude envelope pretty much. If we change the attack on this, it'll sound more like a wobble kind of sound. So you can hear that it loses a pluck. If we turn hold up, you can hear that it goes for as long as the note is. If we turn the decay up, you can hear the effect that has. Sustain, similar to decay, and release. Will pretty much do nothing unless you have some sustain. And also we've got this knob over here, which is the amount, and that's basically the amount that it affects this filter. So we can have a listen to this. If we turn it, if we reset it to its normal value, you won't hear any of this affecting the filter. And the more we turn it up, you can hear the more harsh it becomes almost. And if you turn it negatively to your left, it will inversely affect the filter. So I'll put that back to about here. And that's basically filter modulation 101. We can affect our resonance if we wanted to. I won't go into that. You should be able to experiment and find out how that works. So we'll just delete this because we're not going to use that. It was just to teach you, and we'll have a look at our pad. And this is the next, the cool thing we can do with filter modulation. So I'll just copy this automation clip and make unique. Just bring it down kind of flat. Doesn't matter too much. And that's kind of quiet. I'll just turn it up a bit. All right, so we've got this sitting here. Now, you probably haven't heard of what an LFO is. If you've listened to dubstep and you know what a dubstep wobble sounds like, this is how you make it. So we've got our modulation envelope for our filter, which is untouched. It'll only be working if this light is on and this amount is up, so that's not happening. We're going to leave that. But we're going to go down here. Make sure you're on the cutoff tab for the filter. And we're going to turn the amount on this up quite a lot, maybe 2-3 o'clock, and we have a listen to it. And have a play around with this. Turn the speed up and see what happens. So it has quite a cool effect, really. We can turn the attack down on this also, and you can change the wave shape of this. That's a saw wave; it's more harsh, and a square wave basically doesn't wobble at all. It's just on and off. So there's a number of things you can do with that. You can affect it slightly just to give it some movement. See there, you can barely hear it. You can maybe do something on the resonance. Really, the possibilities are just endless, and it's all about playing around. But that's what an LFO does, and that's basically it for filter modulation. It's just a matter of experimenting, finding out what works, what doesn't, what sounds good. Right guys, so this is lecture 21, the last lecture in our sound design section, and we're just going to be covering some basic effects today, mainly just delay and reverb. But first things first, on the end of the last lecture we put an LFO on this pad. Now you might have left that on. To turn it off, we're just going to go into resonance and reset on the amount knob. Make sure you're in RES and reset on the cut, and that should sound fine. Okay, now when we made our pluck, we added an effect, and this effect was a delay, and we can hear this if we just play the pattern. So you can hear that we don't have any notes. If we delete all these notes and just play one, we'll hear it delay. And you can hear that it lands on each of these here. Alright. Now with that you can change the time. We could put it down here. Even lower. Or even higher. You can also change the pitch, which is pretty useless. I don't see why I would use that. The feedback is how long it takes to decay. We talked about decay in one of the lectures, but this is decay of the delay trail. So if we turn this up, actually what I'll do is I'll make a unique pattern. Make it pattern 13. I'm just going to delete all this so we can hear it. So you can hear that's with a longer feedback. You can turn it up past 100%. As soon as you do that, it will start getting louder and louder. So we'll leave that around 30-ish%. You've also got cutoff frequency. If we turn this up, it's a delay with the filter turned up pretty much, and we can also turn it down. Can't really hear that. Same with resonance, and also pan. And panning is just left to right on your speakers or headphones. This little thing here is ping pong. That means panning will bounce, and it says that up there. And fat mode is just unison, and you'll hear a difference. I'll put that on. Not really. So put that back to how it was. Let me just delete that pattern. And the next thing you have is reverb. Now reverbs are great for adding space and atmosphere to the mix. So if we put a reverb on this synth here, you'll be able to hear the difference quite easily. So if we play this without the reverb, and then we play it with the reverb, massive difference. And I'm just going to show you the different parameters here. So we'll just go back to pattern 13, select this, and basically in our reverb plugin, and to get to our reverb plugin, you just go replace or insert fruity reverb number 1. So to get to, the different knobs we have on here might seem a bit confusing. I'm not going to cover all of them. I'm just going to cover the basics, which you'll see on most reverb plugins. So first thing we've got is dry, and that's at 100%. That's basically if it's dry 100%, it means 100% of the audio signal is going through the channel. If we turn this down to 0, you'd only get the reverb, and it would sound quite weird. Here's an example. And we've still got that pad on, we'll just turn that off. So if we turn it to 50%, you'd hear some of the original audio signal coming in, but not much. So we'll leave that at 100% for now. Next thing is decay, which you should already know what it means. It's basically how long the signal takes to decay. So if we put it at 0.1 seconds, you don't get much at all. If we put it at 20, you can hear that it takes a long time to decay. So we'll leave it at about 2 seconds ish. Color is basically changes the color, but you might not be able to hear that. Next thing is room size, which is basically the size of the reverb. And you might be able to hear this. If I put it to 1 and put it to 100, sounds much wider. So I'll leave it about 60. Low cut is basically, if you turn this up, you'll cut off the lows. So if we went up to, hear that, it cuts off the low end of the reverb. High cut cuts off the highs. It's pretty straightforward. Pre-delay is how long it takes for the reverb to come in. If we put it full at 250, you'd hear a delay between our pluck sound and the reverb. That can come in handy sometimes. So that's pretty much reverb. And there's also delays you can use outside of synths. Here, delay 2 and delay bank. I'm not going to get into that, but feel free to experiment yourself. So that's it for our sound design lecture. I'll leave some links that you can look at if you want to read further into it. In our next section, we're going to be covering EQing and the frequency range. Hey guys, welcome to lecture 23. So in the last section, we covered basic sound design and some basic effects. One thing we forgot to do was turn off the reverb on our pluck. So just click on this little green light here so we can have to turn it off, and also turn it down a bit, it's a bit too loud, and just turn our pad back on. For some reason that was turned off, and that's about it. Now in another lecture or some other lectures, you've seen me use a plugin, a spectrum analyzer, which looks something, actually I'll just show you it. It's called Span, and this is it here. This is what frequencies I'm speaking at actually, which is pretty cool. So you're going to get that. It doesn't cost anything at all. It's completely free. You don't have to sign up or anything. So I'm just going to show you how you can get that and how to import it into FL Studio. Let's delete this. Alright, so go into your internet browser and you're going to go to voxengo.com. That's VOXENGO /product/span, SPAN, and you're brought to this page. Make sure you download from up here, not down here, because this is a complete different plugin. So you should already be using Windows, whether it's Boot Camp on a Mac or an actual Windows computer. So you're going to download VST for Windows 32-bit, not 64, because FL Studio is only 32-bit. 64-bit will still work, but it will have to be bridged in FL Studio. Just going to download this. Actually, just click that. I've already downloaded it, and when it's downloaded, go to the folder that it's in. Should be this one, or whatever one, and just extract the files. Now once you've done that, you'll get a few things here. You just need to worry about that. You can read the user guide if you want, but we're going to copy this here. This is a VST DLL file, and you'll see the FL Studio logo. So copy that, and we're going to go into our home drive. It's C for me. Program files times 86, which is 32-bit. Go down to image line, which is FL Studio's founding company. FL Studio 10, then into plugins, VST, and just paste it. And see, I've already got it in there. I'm just going to replace the file. Okay, there we go. It's already open in FL Studio. And then you're going to go back into FL. I'm going to go onto your master track or any channel. Click on the down arrow and go more. And refresh. When you click refresh, it will come up with fast scan or another one. Go with fast scan, which is a recommended one. And then go down to find span. It'll be colored red. And make sure, and just click the box next to it so it's got an F in it. And then what you'll be able to do is open up this, and you'll see span here. Stick it in, and there you go, you've got span. So moving on, this is basically our frequency spectrum. When we're talking about electronic music or any sound at all, we're talking in this box here. Humans can't hear below 20 hertz, and they generally can't hear but higher than 20 kilohertz as well. In fact, it starts going down with age. Most adults can't hear anywhere near 20 kilohertz. It's probably around 16. You can actually try this out yourself with a test online, which I'll link to, but it's not a huge biggie. The sounds up here are extremely high pitched, and they're hard to tell the tone of. Same down here. When you get below 40 hertz, it's very hard to determine the pitch of the sound, and it's more like a feeling. When you're talking about bass in a song, it's normally this range here, from 60 hertz to 20 hertz. So in the next section, we're going to get into where the instruments lie in this frequency spectrum. But basically, when making music, this is your most important tool, not the spectrum analyzer itself, but knowing where things go and knowing how far you can go. If you put two sounds on top of each other in the same part of the spectrum, they will just double up and they will go twice as loud, and it does not sound good. So that's basically moving into mixing, which we're going to get into soon. So frequency range, 20 hertz down here, 20 kilohertz up here. Normal speaking is, as you can see, around this area, but you've also got stuff up here, and that's about it. So you can have a play around with this using your song. If you want to find the range of maybe one channel, you could solo the channel by right clicking. I'm not going to, because my mic will be muted. And then you can just play it. If we play our song now, you can listen to it, see what it looks like on here. So you can see it's not too bad. It's quite flat, but we've actually got a spike in the middle, so we'll take care of that in another lecture. So yeah, have a play. So in the last lecture, we looked at the frequency spectrum using our spectrum analyzer SPAN, and in this lecture we're going to be looking at what sounds lie where in this range. So basically there's a great chart that you can get online, and this will be available to download in the resources section, and this basically shows you where stuff generally lies. So if we have a look on our analyzer, we've got sub bass, which we haven't got in our track at the moment. We're going to put it in later, and sub bass lies between about 100 Hertz here and below. It's more of something that you feel instead of hear, and without it, a track would feel quite empty. The next thing we've got is a kick, and we'll be able to see this if we solo our kick. Hang on. So if we played this and had a look at on this meter, so your kick covers quite a lot of range. It's mainly based around this area, which is 60 to 100 Hertz. You can see that again. So you can see that at 60 Hertz it's at its highest volume. Next we've got claps, which sort of occupy the probably about the 1000 Hertz or 600 Hertz plus. Have a look at that. So you can see it's a lot of high range, and this is where EQ comes in, because we don't need the stuff that appears down here. And you can see when I play that clap again, you get a little bit of noise down here. Just around there, and we don't need that. So that's where EQ comes in, which we'll be covering in the next lecture. Next thing we've got is hi-hats, which are basically very high up in the range. I'll just put this on detached. So they're quite high up, and basically you'll cut off everything below maybe 1 kilohertz. So just to fill in that top end. Next we've got percussion, and this can range from anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's a high percussion sound, obviously it's going to be in here. If it's a floor tom or something, it'll be down here. So you can see that those two percussion sounds are hitting at around the same frequency. That's why we're not putting them together. If we did, it would basically just double the volume, and it would sound quite bad. Next we've got the bass, and since we've got a filter cutoff envelope on here, we'll see the frequency change, which is quite a cool thing. So let's play that. So you can see that it sort of moves around here, and that's because of our filter. But basically that bass covers quite a lot of the range. What we're going to do is actually EQ a lot of this stuff off here to make room for our pluck. Basically, if you think of the frequency spectrum as a box, you can't really go past the top. If you go past the top, you'll clip. Digital clipping, which sounds quite bad. So you have to fit all these different things in a box without them overlapping necessarily on each other. If you have two sounds on the same frequency, they'll double in volume, and you'll probably reach the top. So you have to make room for each sound. Next thing we've got is a pluck. We've got two automations on here, which is a filter cutoff and volume, which we'll see. So this is based around the 200 to probably 10 kilohertz region, and our bass actually took up a lot of that space. So you basically, again, it just adds more sound, and you don't really need that. So you could see with the little automation that it popped up around here. It's expected. Next thing we've got is our other synth, which is a more melodic kind of sound. So have a look at that. So again, that takes up a lot of our pluck region. What we'd do is EQ this pluck to make room for the synth, because it takes up certain notches of the spectrum. Also, we had a lot of sub stuff down here which we would EQ out. We really don't want that. And the last thing is our pad. So let's have a look at this. Be interesting. It's quite a quiet sound, occupying the 100 Hz to about 4 kHz region, and it's just to pad, pretty much pad stuff out. Excuse the pun. So that's where our things sit in the spectrum. Again, you can download that chart and have a look through it, because we haven't got everything in the song yet. But basically, we need to do some EQing, and this is part of our mixing section. So in the next lecture, we're going to be EQing some of our stuff, making it. Alright, so in the last lecture, we looked at where things fit in the spectrum. For example, we had our bass down the low end of the spectrum, and our synths and pad, no, our two synths up the high end, our claps up the high end, etc. And in this lecture, we're going to be looking at EQ and its purpose. And EQ is one of the fundamentals of music production. You pretty much use it in every single track, and you should. And it's basically just removing sounds from the spectrum. So if we took our kick and we played it without EQ, it would just sound like this, normal, which is pretty standard. Now if we EQ'd out the bottom end, you'll be able to hear that. So if we took number 1 and moved it down like that and up, you'll hear that a lot of the bass has gone from it. Put that back up. And it's the same with the top end. So if we moved number 7, say number 7 down, you'd hear that it loses its punch. So have a pause the video and have a play around with that. Move different ones, for example that. And see what it does, see how it affects the sound, and then we'll move on. So we're not going to EQ our kick as such. There's some things you can do to change the sound. For example, you could move it down maybe around 200 Hertz to make it sound more flat, which is what I normally do. You could adjust it up here to give it a bit more punch. Just one thing though, and I'll show you how this works. The fruity parametric EQ, it's pretty simple but might be a bit confusing. So you have 7 bands and you can move these wherever you want. I like to keep them in order, and you'll see that if I move this down, it's quite a big dip, and you can change this by using your mouse wheel and scrolling up or down, or you can go down here and adjust this knob. You can adjust it all on here as well. I prefer to do it graphically. The other thing you can do is change the types in order of them. You can right click and go type high pass, which is like that, and order steep 8, which would be like that. So play around with that, see how it works, and see how it affects the sound. We're going on to EQ's purpose. So at the moment we have a bass and we have a synth. And what we're going to do is we're going to add one more thing in here, and that is a sub bass. You need a sub bass in tracks because it sort of adds warmth and depth to it. It's low frequencies that you feel instead of hear, and you'll hear it in most tracks. If you put a low pass filter on a normal track, you'll hear the sub bass. So we're going to add that in. All we're going to do is go to our new pattern, find first empty, right click on bass 1 and go insert, 3x oscillator, and then rename it to bass, sub bass. Color it yellow for the space, and we'll link it to channel insert 12. We'll just alt and left arrow key to move it down. And what we're going to do now is copy this, which is our bass pattern from before. Control A, Control C, go into our pattern 16, which was empty pattern, sub bass, copy paste, and we've got this. So we'll put this into a playlist underneath our bass 1. So you can just go insert 1 there. Whoops. Put in here, pattern 16. Now we'll solo this, and at the moment it will sound pretty boring. And that's a bit too high. So you might not be able to hear this well if you don't have good headphones or good speakers. It's very low frequency, and we'll see this on our S spectrum analyzer. What we're going to do here is move D upwards, basically because below F sharp F you can't actually hear it at all, and most systems won't reproduce it. So we're going to move this up to D3. No, we're not. Okay, this is getting into music theory, but basically here what we're going to do is we're going to move it to another note, different to our bass note. So if we look at our chord, we've got D, we've got F sharp, and we've got A. We can choose any one of those, and we'll choose what sounds best. So if we take it up to F sharp, which is the same note as our initial starting one, and we play that next to the bass, it still works, it still sounds okay. Again, we're going to do that with E because E is a little bit too low and you probably can't hear that. So if we go over here, you can see we've got E, G sharp, and B. And we'll go into here and see what sounds best. G sharp. That sounds a bit weird. We'll go to B. So we'll leave it at G sharp. It doesn't sound great, but for the purpose of this tutorial, we'll just leave it at that. So this is our sub bass. We're not going to go into detail in that. We're just using it for the purpose of EQ. So this bass here, bass 1, if we have a look at this in our spectrum analyzer, we just open up span, you'll see that there's a lot of low frequencies in here. If I solo this, you'll be able to see that. Span. So there's not too much, and it sort of cuts off around here. But if for example, if we had low frequencies down here for our initial bass, we would want to EQ this out to make room for the sub bass. our sub bass hits about below 100 hertz, so this from here downwards. So I'd want to EQ out. So to take a safety measure, we're just going to open up a parametric EQ2 on our bass 1. We're going to change it to high pass by right clicking, and then steep 8, and we're just going to drag this up to about 100. And you'll hear that some of the low end has gone now, which means we can add our sub bass in and it will sound good. So we've got that sorted. We're just going to EQ some other things here. So we've got our synth 1, which is our pluck, and we'll have a look at this on the analyzer. So you can see that it hasn't got much low end, it slopes off quite a lot. We're just going to cut that up because we don't actually need it. So I put an EQ on there. We're going to do the same thing again, order, steep 8, high pass, and bring it up to about 200. And what this does is it makes room for the bass 1, which is not our sub bass, because our bass 1 comes up all the way. And in fact, what we're going to do is go back to bass 1 and cut off some of the high end. Not too much, just slope it down a bit to make room for our pluck. So already we can see this sounds a lot better than it did before if we play the whole thing once. One thing that stands out a bit too much is our melody synth. So we're just going to pull that down a bit. So going back to EQ, you should basically EQ everything you've got. If you've got a hi-hat, high pass it, because a lot of the time hi-hats can have low frequencies. For example, if we soloed this, you might not see anything at all. There might not be anything at all. No, there's not. Occasionally you'll get stuff down in the low end, and it's best to just high pass it all the way up, because on a hi-hat you don't need anything down here. And you can do the same with claps and percussion and anything else you want. So that's basically EQ, the basics of it. In the next section we're going to be covering some tips for EQ, and just some simple stuff, nothing too advanced. But definitely play around with EQing, how to fix the sound. Hello and welcome to lecture 27. Sorry. So in this lecture we're covering arrangement, and this is the last section in this course. And it's basically putting the song together to actually make it a song, because at the moment we've just got an 8-bar loop, and that's kind of boring to listen to after a while. So I've got 2 songs here that we're going to have a look at the arrangement of. They're both by me. One's a remix, one's an original which isn't quite finished. But first I'm going to go over what arrangement is. So it's a number of things really, but at its core it's how the song is put together. So that can be anything from what instruments you've got, where your drums are placed, where your bass is, that kind of thing. And we're just going to go through the basics. So in the arrangement we have sections, typically sections such as an intro, chorus, verse, that kind of thing. In pop music, it's a lot of this verse, chorus kind of stuff. In dance music it's a little bit different. And of course it depends on the genre of music you're listening to. But we're just going to go through this song here first. So first of all, we've got an intro. Typically you'll have an intro of 32 bars, and you can see here just looking at the waveform, that something changes after 32 bars. It's not quite in sync. So why do we have an intro? It's basically because it's basically for DJs. Normally on the radio you'll hear an edit of a song, which will be an intro cut off pretty much, and you need an intro for DJs just so they can mix it in and out of the last song. For example, at the end here we have an outro and it's quite boring. There's not much going on. In the intro we don't have much going on either. So during the intro we're building up to this part here, which is the first, how do you call it, sort of meat of the song. So you can hear at 16 bars the kick comes in fully. You've got some other sounds coming in, some leads, and then at 32 bars it just comes down to the kick and the bass. And then so that's that section, and now we've got a breakdown which lasts for quite a while here, and it's continually building up. Dropped a lot of the drums, or all of the drums, and it's just sort of slowing the mood, the energy down a bit. You can hear that around here. So you can see that it's got that nice pad coming through. It's much more mellow and smooth. And then we're building up here. And that's the main part of the song. So it can be quite hard to get your head around the arrangement. So your homework assignment is to listen to different songs. You can put them into FL Studio if you want. Just make sure you don't close it down and make a new project, because of course you cannot open your saved files if you haven't bought it. So sort of a typical arrangement of maybe a trance song. You've got an intro, you've got a build-up part mainly. You could call it a verse, I guess. And that goes for quite a while. That goes for 32. It goes for about 40-ish bars, I think. Something along those lines. And then you've got this long breakdown here. You've got 32 bars of chorus. And then you come back down. This part is what I call a sort of a pre-outro. So it's back to this part here, which you've got after the intro, and you can have a listen to this. And it's almost identical to this part, except there's no symbol in there. And then on to the outro. So we'll have a look at this next song. You might find this a bit boring, but it's just good to understand how arrangement works. And basically it'll always be in sections of 16 to 32 bars, or 8 bars. Some intros might be 16 bars, or 24 bars, or even 48 bars. Doesn't really matter, whatever works. I find 32 bars is the most common. It seems to work a lot for me. So in this song, it's a little bit different. We don't have we don't have a meet or a drop part happening at bar 33, sorry. Instead we have a small breakdown. So we've got this intro starting at 16, sort of building up a bit. It's quite mellow compared to this song here. We'll skip to bar 31 just to hear it go into the breakdown. So you can hear it's bringing down the energy already. It's supposed to be more of a chill track, not really a club style song, and it probably won't sound that good because it's not finished. And then we come into this part here, which is also quite chilled out. And you can hear that the bass comes in there. And so we're continually building up. And what I've done here, this counts as part of the arrangement. It's about 4 bars taking out the kick, well, the bass of the kick really. And it sort of provides a bit of tension, which we're going to be talking about in the next lecture, or the one after that. You can just hear the transition here. So it adds a bit of energy, more energy to this part. And again we have a breakdown, not as long as, it's actually the same size I think. And then back to this part again, which is exactly the same as this. A lot of songs do that, they have the same drop parts. It works sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it's boring. Again, it's up to you, up to what you think. So that's another typical arrangement. You've got 2 breakdowns. Of course you've got your outro here. Which is typically just drums, maybe a little bit of effects. So I encourage you to go away, listen to some music, and what I like to do is count the bars. So count, for example, if we were playing this, oops, I'll just turn it down a bit. You'd count 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, etc. And you'll see where things lie. Another good thing is to find out where things come in. For example, in this song we start off with drums, but we have a bass coming in at 16. We've also got a lead coming in at around 8, and it's getting filtered up. So it's good to have a listen out for those kind of things. And yeah, so in the next lecture we're going to be changing this 8-bar loop into one of these. Hey everyone, welcome to lecture 28, and this is going to be quite a long lecture. Basically what we're going to do is put our song together in terms of arrangement. So in the last lecture we looked at some basic arrangements in some other songs, and at the moment all we have is an 8-bar loop, and it's not much of a song, it's quite short. So what we're going to do is basically start painting our song. It's a weird word, it's what I like to call it. So we're going to first of all work on our intro. It doesn't matter what you start with, I just like to start with the intro and we'll lead into a breakdown at bar 33 over here. So just basically grab all this stuff here, which is your bass, your lead and your pluck, and just stick it over here at bar 32. And we're going to have to do a bit of automation to make it sound good, and we're not going to put any effects in here until the next lecture, where we make our song more interesting and build some tension. So all we're doing is focusing on the arrangement at the moment. We want quite a simple intro, so what we're going to do is drag this hat, which is the faster hat, over to 16 bars, and you can hear it here. And we'll also drag some of our percussion over to bar 9, and also keep it going. Oops. So copy that, paste it again until bar 33, and with this tom we'll start this at 16 bars and delete it. So we want our kick to keep going the whole time, of course, and our clap. Doesn't matter too much, again it's preference. You don't need to copy this exactly, but we want it to build up. We want more elements to come in after a specific number of bars. We'll get rid of this pad for now, we don't need that.
and we'll just have a look at this. So first 8 bars, it's going to sound very simple. Nine bars, we've got this percussion coming in. Oops, we'll keep our hat going actually. Might actually help. And then 16 bars, we've got this other hat coming in and this tom. So the next thing we've got to do is put our bass in here, but we're only going to have one note playing, so drag it down so it's just the first note, and then use your paint tool, drag it all the way across. Except we don't want it that high, we want to filter it down a bit, so we're going to grab one of these automation clips, make it unique by clicking on the top left, delete all these points, bit of a hassle. I'm actually trying to keep this simple. There's a lot of stuff we need to do, but we'll keep it basic for this lecture. So make sure this is 2 bars, copy it across, so you've got it filtered underneath. And if we want, we can filter this up, but for now we're not going to, we're just going to leave it. Next we're going to have a 16 bar breakdown over here, and this is where our pluck comes in, but we won't bring our lead in yet, so you can delete that. Actually, just easier, we can just drag it over here for later, then we don't need to find our automation clips and stuff. That's good over there. So this is our breakdown. Again, we're going to filter down that bass because we don't want to interfere with our pluck too much. So we're just going to make a long automation clip here, and again delete these points. In fact, it would probably be easier to grab one of these ones over here, but it's too late now. So just delete these until we've got a nice straight line, and we're just going to up like that so it builds tension in the song, which is one of the most important things. You have to keep building energy, especially in dance music. With our pluck, we're going to do a similar thing. We're going to get rid of this little notch and just a nice curve up, and then we can add a little bit more of a increase. And what we're going to do is, oh, actually we've got a 16 bar, make this a bit longer, double it, and this is our sub bass here. You might not be able to hear it that well, and what we're going to do is drop our sub bass on the last 2 bars, and there's a reason for that which I'll explain. So let's copy our pluck over and we'll keep this going. The reason we're dropping the sub bass here is because it creates tension in regards to the bass. There's no, in this part there's no bass, so you can only hear the high frequencies, and then when the kick and the bass, sub bass coming together, it creates much more of an impact. So what we're going to do here is just put in keep our pluck going. Again, I'm just doing this on the go. I haven't really planned this just because each arrangement is different, and again it doesn't matter too much, but you have to follow the 8 to 16 bar rule. So we've got that. It doesn't sound too bad. We'll keep our clap going here, and what we'll do is we'll put our clap at bar 41, starting to lead into this section here, which is, I don't know what you call it, maybe a verse. And what that does is it lets the listener know that something's coming. There's already a beat coming in. And put some perk in here. So we'll leave that going for 8 bars. We'll just double this, copy and paste. And basically we're going to bring in some more elements, of course our percussion, that kind of thing. Sorry about that. So I'll drag this over here, and we'll stick in a reverse clap, of course on the end of every 4 bars, and also our other hat here after 8 bars. We'll also bring this tom in. So this is our verse. It's 16 bars long at the moment. You could probably leave it at that and then go into another breakdown. Typically they'll be 32 bars plus. So we're going to make ours a little bit longer. We're going to make it 8 bars longer, and then start to lead into a breakdown. So we'll just keep this kit going till about, till 72 bars. Keep all this going, of course. And the pluck. Okay. So we sort of need something to happen here. It's been 16 bars. Nothing's really going on. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring the pad in. So if we go to pattern 15, I think it was pattern 15, and drag this pad in, we can have it coming down here. Oops. We'll have it coming in here, but we will, again, we'll low pass it in. So at the moment it sounds like this, which is just way too harsh. So what we need to do is go into our insert tab, mod X, which is our cutoff envelope, create automation clip, and we'll drag it down here and just have it slowly building up. Normally we would side chain something like this, but it's a bit more of an advanced technique, so we'll leave it for now. But side chain is basically that pumping effect which we did on this. If you don't know how to do that, then all it is automating the volume, channel volume here, and it's just basically ducks the volume when there's a kick, when there should be a kick. As you can see, every beat it drops. So you can do that with the pad if you'd like. So for now we're going to keep this going again, but we're going to drop the kick. And again, this creates tension. It shows the listener that there's something that's going to happen, or is losing its energy. The other thing we're going to do is bring down our bass, low pass it again, and also our pluck is going to be low passed. So you could build it up a little here, and then start bringing it down. And then we've got our melody coming in, our single sort of line melody kind of thing, and we'll low pass this so it doesn't come in straight away. Again, building energy, keep it going for about 16 bars. I don't want to make this lecture too long, but it's just going to be because it's a bit of a long process. So if we want, we can leave this side chained, but we're actually going to do this. Volume automation. We're actually going to do this on when the drums come back in, about here. So we'll leave it out for the breakdown. At the moment, we've just got this. It's a bit boring, so we want our pluck to be in there, and also our bass. So it's something pretty simple there. Again, we can have those drums coming back in. So this time we'll actually change it up a bit. Over here we just had a hat and a clap. This time we're going to have our hat, both our hats, reverse clap. It should be all good. And again, build up this bass. We're going to leave a gap here, and I'll explain why in the next lecture when we cover tension, where all we're going to do is keep this going, our melody and our pad going, and maybe bring this up a bit. Now we're on to our main or final section before the outro. So we'll take that to 32 bars ish, 16. Bring all the drums in at once. Oops, change to E. All the drums in at once. Basically to create the biggest impact we want. You know, this is a final part of a song. We want it to end big, so we'll have everything at once. The only problem with this is that it can be harder to sort of create tension near the end of the song, because you haven't got much more to add. But there's ways to work around that, which we'll cover. Okay, I accidentally copied all this. One annoying thing about FL Studio is that if you copy onto something else, it will stay there and it will be twice as loud. Maybe that's fixed in FL Studio 11, which recently came out, but I don't know. So we've got everything going on. We've got the pluck. Again, you want this to be quite low so it doesn't interfere with our melody over the top, and you want this to be high. Remember, this isn't actually mixed down, so it may not sound amazing. We're not going to mix down in this course just because it's a whole new sort of field of music production, really. It's the technical side. We did cover it quickly, but there's just not enough time to go through it. So make sure you've got your sub bass in there, of course. And we'll just have a listen to how this sounds at the moment. So it's not too bad, but I think that lead is quite high, so we're going to turn it down a bit. Because now you can't hear the pluck that well. That's not too bad. So we've got that going for 16 bars, and then we'll start bringing it back down again into our outro. So basically we could have a small 2-bar breakdown. Not 2-bar, 8-bar breakdown, which leads into the outro, which is 16 bars. Or we could just bring it straight into the 16-bar outro. For the purpose of this tutorial, it's already been about 17 minutes. I'm just going to bring it straight into the outro. So we'll keep all our drums going, and what we'll do is we'll drop the lead. So over here we'll bring it down to almost nothing, and we'll also drop the sub bass here, and we'll keep the bass going again one note only and keep it quite low. So you want to bring it down to about here, and we'll also keep our pluck going and slowly bring it down to our 8 bars. After 8 bars we want everything to stop apart from our drums. So just have a listen to how that sounds. So that's not too bad, and that gives the DJ room to mix it in and out. I know this is basic. It may not sound perfect at the moment. It probably never will. It'll be the first song you've made, many of you. So this is our second to last lecture. In the last lecture we're going to be tidying it up a bit, and we're going to be adding some effects and some tension, normally in the form of rises, and some little tricks you can do. Okay, this is our final lecture. So in this lecture we're going to be adding tension to our song. So we've finished the arrangement, and at the moment it sounds okay, but it's a bit boring. There's a number of ways you can add tension. You can do it musically, you can do it with effects, and you can just do it with taking things out. So that's what we're going to start with. All we're going to do is take some kicks out, and you'll actually be surprised at how much of an effect this can have. So for example, if we do it at the end of the first 8 bars, we'll hear that it creates some tension here. If we start playing from here, so it sort of signals that something's going to happen. We can also do it here as well. So what we'll do is we'll go through the track and just take out a few kicks. So typically at the end of 8 bars sounds good. And you can also take out more than one kick. For example, we'll take 2 out here. You can see how that sounds. So it's a simple way to add some interesting little parts to your song. Always signals that something new is coming next. For example, here we've got the extra hats coming in. We've got nothing coming in here, but it's a good way to keep the energy high. So for example, we're going into our outro here. At the moment it flows okay, but what we could do is take this whole kick out, and it would add a lot of tension building into the outro. So it's just a simple little trick that you can use to create some tension. The next thing is effects. You may not have any effects samples, but I'm just going to show you how you can use them. So for example, I'll pull up an effects sample bank. We've got impact effects, so we could put some of these all the way down here. Something like that on the breakdown. And of course you could assign this to a mixer track and stick some effects on it, but just adds a lot of character to each part of the song. So that's one thing you could do, and find places to put that. Next thing, that's right, crash cymbals is a great way to add some tension. So what we're going to do is insert a few tracks up here. Just put some crash cymbals in. So you can put one on the start. Of course, turn it down a bit. If you don't have any samples, don't worry about it. Just have a look at how I'm actually using them. So electronic dance music contains repetition all the time. So what we're going to do is take that and copy it every 16 bars. Like that. It's a little bit loud. So that's just another way to add some more to the song, make it sound more interesting. So we'll look at a few more crashes here and maybe put it in between these ones. Oh. Sorry about that. It's quite a nice one. We can put this in between and have it going every 16 bars as well. We don't want it to be too overpowering, so I'll make this one a little bit quieter. And one thing you can do is copy this, make unique as sample, and then reverse it to lead into the next crash. For example, we could take a bit off to make it more quiet, and then drag it over there. If you want to drag it so it doesn't snap, just hold down your Alt key, and you'll hear this effect. So we could copy that and put it every second one of these crashes, for example. And again, that sort of adds some variation. Now the last thing we're going to do to create tension is white noise builds. So we've got our crash cymbals, and they're good, but they don't last that long. So we need something that fills in the whole frequency spectrum, or the high end, just to give it lots more energy. And you'll hear this in most songs. It's got the white noise, something you'll hear on television when you can't find a channel. Not anymore because it's all digital, but you know what I mean. So we're going to rename this track to noise. Just make it any color, pink. Find a new pattern. And we're going to insert a Ferrex oscillator. And when you're in that, you're going to change it to noise. I don't know why this is up here. Going to change it to noise. Make sure these ones are turned down. Rename this noise. You can color it if you want, and we're going to link this to a new insert. For example, insert 13. Link channels and turn it down. And we're just going to put, it doesn't matter what note you do it, because if you listen to this, it won't change at all. It's just one sound. So I'll turn it down quite a bit, and we're going to put two equalizers on this, and I'll explain why. First equalizer is to cut off the low end. So we've got if we go auto steep 8 and high pass, bring it up to here, we don't want any of the sub stuff or bass, because white noise does produce at those frequencies. And the next EQ we're going to use is one to automate the sound, make it sound like it's building up. So we're just going to get rid of these ones. We only want one. So you can just drag on these and pull down with your mouse. And we're going to change this to a band pass. And then by right clicking and then steep 6. So if you listen to this pattern now, if we just play the pattern, hang on. Actually, we go into our playlist. Okay, we'll go into our playlist and put this pattern through the whole song. And we're not going to have it playing through the whole song, we're just going to automate it. So, insert a new track for the automation clip. Go into here and copy that, this one here. Create automation clip, and now you can automate it. You'll see how this sounds. So if we build up, we have one building up here, the bar 9, and play it down, you can see how this sounds. It's pretty cool. So we pretty much have that going through the whole track, up and down, of course. Again, you can play around with this, see what sounds best. I'll typically just, every 16 bars, have it either going up or down. So we've got a build up here, which is where we want it going up. And so on. So I almost always have it pushing down on the breakdown, which is here. So I just made it a bit shorter there. And of course, build up again, down, down. And sometimes it's good to have it not building up and just straight hitting. For example, here, you can't hear it building up, and it just hits in, which is creates quite an impact. Let's do one more, and then we'll just do a small filter down for the end. So that's pretty much how we create tension. Of course, there's a lot more things you can do. You can add a few more effects, but make sure it doesn't overpower your song. I'd just like to thank you for taking part in this course. If you have any questions, please leave some. And of course, leave a review, rate it, and tell your friends about it if it helps you. I'll be releasing more courses, more aimed at advanced parts of production. Of course, this is an introduction course. I hope you got something out of it. So now that we've finished our song, we want to add some finishing touches to it, make it a little bit louder, and also render it down. So first of all, you'll notice that if we play our song compared to another song from maybe our iTunes library or YouTube or whatever, it won't be as loud. And the reason for this is because we've mixed down our song at low levels. So if we play our song, you'll notice that this does not hit right at the top. Most songs will be mastered to 0 decibels here, or -1, a little bit lower. So if we play this from the middle, you'll see that it won't hit that high. So at the moment it's hitting at about -6 dB. Now there is a way we can make this louder, and normally this process would be called mastering, but the thing is, it's not really something beginners should worry about. In fact, I don't even do my own mastering. It's something that a label does if you get an official release. There's a few things that is involved in mastering. One would be compression, again EQ over the top, and also limiting, which is what we're going to do. So on your master channel you're going to insert Freddie limiter, not HTML notebook. Once we've got Freddie limiter on here, we can start making it a bit louder. So you might hear straight away that it's a bit louder. Might work. Okay, so once it's on here, what we're going to do is start turning this gain up here until we get it to about minus 2, -1, because what happens if you turn the gain up too much, it starts getting squashed, and you'll see the peaks sort of cut off near the top as I turn this gain knob up. And the interesting thing about doing this, my voice is a bit louder now. Interesting thing about doing this is that you find some elements that are far too loud. For example, I noticed that the sub bass was way too loud after limiting, and also the crash cymbals were as well. So that's something that's a bit more advanced, and we'll cover that in future courses. I'd just like to thank you for taking this course. We learned about a lot of things, basically all the fundamentals you need to make a song. So we covered what our DAW was, which is a digital audio workstation, DAW. We covered MIDI and samples, and then we went on to drums. In our drum section we covered finding drum samples, where they are in our browser, choosing the right samples for your song, and we also I also said that the rules can be broken, which is an important thing to remember. We programmed our first beat, and we also bring our drums to life by making some changes, including a reverse clap. In section 3 we covered bass, and we looked at some examples of bass lines, and we programmed our bass line here. And we also added some movement to our bassline with filters. In section 4 we covered synths and leads, and in here we made a chord progression. We also added change to our chord progression, as you can see here, adding an extra note at the top, and we also created a melody from our chord progression. Now in section 5 we did a bit of sound design. In this section we looked at what waves are. We also looked at what oscillators and wave shapes were, the fundamentals of making a synth sound. We looked at the amplitude or OSC oscillator envelope, and this is what's used to shape our sound. We then looked at filters, internal filters on a synth, and also external filters, which is this here. After that we looked at modulating filters, which is how we got our pluck sound here. And then we looked at some basic effects, including delay. Now after that we looked at EQ, and this is an important part for mixing, which I mentioned. We looked at the frequency spectrum with using our spectrum analyzer span, and then we looked at where things fit in the spectrum, and we looked at how to EQ things the right way, and that included bringing out the bottom end of certain sounds, for example the pluck, to make room for the bass which lies down here. After that, we looked at arranging our song. We talked about why arrangement was so important, especially from a DJ's perspective. Then we arranged our song, and we also built some tension, taking out some kicks and adding some crash cymbals, and that was it. So the final stage in this is rendering down your song. All you need to do is turn your limiter back on if you copied me by turning it off. I'm not going to turn it on because my voice will be too loud. Turn your limiter back on. If you've got any extra automation clips, drag them down or select the length of your song, and make sure you don't cut it off. For example, we've got a crash cymbal and white noise here. If we cut it off over here, halfway through this white noise, it wouldn't sound too good. So we're going to make sure we cut it off at the end, and we're going to go to File, Export. Now you can either export as a WAV file, MP3 file, OGG file, or MIDI file, or zip loop package, but you don't need to worry about that. So MIDI file doesn't contain any sound itself. OGG file is similar to WAV, but WAV is more commonly used. A WAV file is generally an uncompressed file, so it will have high quality, but it will also be a bigger file. If you want to upload this to the internet, I would suggest using an MP3 file, but render it down to both. So you can do this by clicking WAV file, saving it to where you want, naming it, and then clicking MP3 as well. If you're choosing MP3, turn it up to 320 kilobytes per second, so it sounds quite nice. And make sure you've got song selected and not pattern, and then you can just render it by clicking start. So once again, thank you for taking part in this course. If you found it useful, please leave a review and let your